Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Hsdsb School Board meeting of Tuesday, December 8th, 2020. Before we begin, I'm going to read our state of emergency meeting notice. As chair of the Hsdsb School Board, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12 pursuant to executive order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen to this meeting by dialing the following phone number: 888-475-4499 or 877-853-5257. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom telephonetically. Instructions have also been provided on the district website at hsdschools.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email hmstechnology@hsdschools.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Melissa, will you please call the roll call attendance?
Yes. Megan Malcolm,
I'm present. I'm alone in this room as well as my house.
Caitlin Parnell,
Here, I'm alone in the room. There are other members of my family in the house.
David Smith,
I am here alone in the room with others in the house.
Jim Sweeney,
Hi, you're in the room alone, others in the house.
Karen Yasenka,
Here, alone in my office, there are other family members in the home.
Executive Consultant Dr. Earl Metzler,
Present, in my home office, and there are other members of my family in the house.
thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. Next up, we have approval of minutes. Board members, in your packet, you have 2 sets of minutes for us to review, both from the November 24th meeting. We have the regular meeting minutes and the non-public meeting minutes. Take a moment to review if you have not done so already, and we can either take them separately or in one motion. When board members are ready, if we could have a motion.
Caitlin, I'll motion to accept the meeting minutes from the regular meeting on 11/24 as well as the non-public minutes from 11/24 as well.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from board members? Okay, seeing none, Melissa, will you please call the roll vote?
Yes. Miss Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney? Sorry, Mr. Sweeney, could you repeat that? I didn't hear your audio.
Yes.
Thank you. And
Welcome.
Mrs. Yasenka?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, do we have any public comments this evening?
No, Madam Chair, we do not have any.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving along to current business. Mr. Smith, Ms. Malcolm, I believe you are going to present to us the Central School renovation plan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone. First, Mr. Flynn, I just want to, or Gino, if you can tell me if Craig is available, if he's on the call or not, because he will be presenting.
So
from
is it
Trident.
safe to assume his name is The Architects? That's the only one that I would assume.
I
Okay.
think that's a very
Yeah,
safe.
I just wanted to double check before I promoted, so he's all set.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Flynn. So just bear with me for one moment, everyone. I'm going to share my desktop and share my screen. Let's see if this works. All right. Can I just get somebody verbally tell me they can see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I appreciate the audience right now. I appreciate everybody's thoughts on this and open, feedback that we'll have at the end. We want to come to the community and to the board right now, especially to discuss the renovation project proposal for the Central School. We will be going through a number of items. We're going to try to make it quick but simple and get directly to the point that we're looking for at the end for a couple votes on some warrant articles. So how we're going to go through this today, there we go. Do this intro and approach to how we've got to this point. We're going to do a schematic walkthrough. So Craig is the architect, as you were introduced earlier. Craig is going to share his screen and walk through what the plan is going to provide. And he's going to walk through it in two different ways, one with the 60s wing, which we feel is a different warrant than the addition that we want to do to satisfy the needs of the school and the kids in the community. After we go through the walkthrough, I'll take that back over. Megan and I will go through the recap of what's in the school edition and talk about, the cost and the warrant discussion around the 60s wing. And again, the addition that we want to put in front of the board. So just to give everybody that hasn't heard, I know we've talked about this a little bit over the past few months, but thankfully back in June, May-June timeframe, Megan and I had, volunteered to do this. And then in August, we came to the board to ask for, approval to move forward with at least continuing to discuss with Trident and come up with an idea of how we, of what the plan should be. Evaluate what has been in the past, look at the current needs, the current environment, and see what's the best path forward. And I believe we've got this way through a number of ways. First, we've worked with Trident and school administration. Can't say enough. We have the best team part of this between, again, the school administration that has walked through this, between Dr. Metzler and Mr. Dowd, Mr. Flynn, Mr. Mackey, Mr. Collins, and so many others that have given input. And then through Gino and Caitlin from Trident, along with the architect, Craig, and Keith has helped as so much on this as well. So how we went about this was really a 6-step process. We reviewed the 2018 warrant proposal, and then we looked at the 2019 cost ideas, what we decided not to move forward with last year, and that plan of stepping back and looking at it. We reviewed a bunch of feedback that we had received over the last few years through the board, through the community, through the administration, and looked to see, what was some common themes. The next one, what we did was we looked at, we did multiple walkthroughs of the school. We also, heard from Mr. Collins not too long ago about the impact of the school population, which is on the rise. So we're trying to understand, what we saw through past warrant articles, through walking around school physically, looking at everything with the complete team, and then knowing that the school is rising. The impact of, taking over half a library for a classroom was one of the ideas for this coming year because of the student population. Then as we walked through this, we went through and we really did flesh out all the details of that layout. We looked at the benefits of the plans, gaps of previous plans, And then we went through and we revised this multiple times for opportunities for cost takeout. Where did, we see that we weren't sacrificing the needs of the students, but we were still keeping the functionality and the longevity of the building. So if we, just changing out materials, but ensuring that we had, the foresight to say, but we don't want to sacrifice in 5 years, be doing something over again just because we decided we try to save a few bucks. We're living through that with the 60s wing, and we don't want to do that again. And I'll tell you that through some really great discussions, we were able to take out costs, but make sure that the building will sustain for a long time to come. And then lastly, coming to the board right now, that's our last step here. This is until, if this passes with the board, this is when we want to come together as in unity and form this bond with the community so we can communicate what the need is and the best way to accomplish. All right. So that's how we got here. A lot of hard work. So I appreciate a lot of people's feedback and input from the board, from the administration, the community, Trident. We really did funnel everything in so we could come up with the best plan forward. And with the best plan forward, the very first thing we had to do was partner with experts. And Trident is somebody that we've been working with for a number of years. And I say that they're experts because they really are. They have accomplished so much in this Southern New Hampshire area. On the screen right now, you can see that these are just 4 of the schools. They've done many more schools and other just buildings for towns and cities in Southern New Hampshire. And the great thing to communicate is, and this is not only talking to Trident, who of course is going to tout their good record, but we've also reached out to other school board members, other people in other communities that they've always come on or below budget. They've always delivered on or ahead of schedule. And that's by accomplishing the task that they have in their project management folder. So again, these are just 4 of the schools. There's so many more in Salem, the hard work that the team has done. And they're going to bring that expertise here in how to deliver the same type of positive results. And we really look forward to a plan passing so that we can finally get after this and know that we have the best team possible to provide the results and the value to not only the school system, but just they're doing a really great job right now. And we want to lean on them for their expertise. Just to see if there's any questions yet from anyone. Okay, I'm going to now stop sharing because we are going to turn this over to Craig, the architect, to help us walk through what is in the plan from the 60s wing and the addition. So I know, Craig, you got a lot of great stuff to share. So if you wouldn't mind sharing and walking us through this.
Absolutely. I'll share my screen here. And can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
So we've been involved here a few years and gone through a lot of different iterations and spoken to a number of people, worked through the school district, and you do really have a great school district. I'm really impressed with the teachers, administration, and having a board that's committed. That really helps a lot as well. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of what we've done. And the reason I say a little bit is because we have done so much in reviewing this over the last years. There's just a lot that we've looked at. So why is the project proposed? I want to review this to the big areas are safety and security. That's number 1. Number 2 is for code upgrades. Number 3 is building efficiency. And the 4th area is space deficiencies. And these are much larger categories, but kind of gives you a sense of what we had to look at. So in terms of safety and security, it really was all the access points around the existing school. There was access control that needed to be implemented within. Some of that has been done to this point, but there's more to go. Again, on safety and security, there are controlled access points within the school. This is our front entry stair that leads up to administration. Administration does not have eyes on the street. They do have a camera, but not physically present at the front. That's something obviously that we want to avoid. And then there's an access point over to the gymnasium that is hard to control. Building code requirements, we ran across a number of non-compliant items, things that would have been compliant when it was built, but needs to be brought up to code with egress, entering, exiting the building, widths, doors and hardware and railings and that type of thing. There are more restrooms that need to be added to the school. And then of course, the big one is fire sprinklers have never been present or never been installed in the Hempstead school. Obviously that's a big one we have to do today. In terms of building efficiency, this is the 60s wing that David had spoken a little bit about. And the big areas that need to be updated on that are the exterior masonry walls are just one white, they're one width thick of masonry. If you look at that, that's an R 1.2. Anybody knows that an R value, we kind of started at R 19 if you're building your house. Code minimum for a continuous good insulation in a school or commercial building would be an R 20. So it's substantially deficient from that standpoint. The roof needs to be replaced. The windows they're older and they leak. There's fresh air, and this is a big one we picked up on that I'm sure the teachers could tell you about as well, is this on the drive lane that the fresh air is pulled from the waiting cars into the classrooms. So obviously we need to have a different heating and ventilation system. And with that brings actually a lot of cost savings once the heating and ventilation is done, not to the highest level as in everybody gets air conditioning. That's the first thing most people ask. But we have a desiccant cooling system that provides the same type of comfort in those shoulder months. The next was the space deficiencies, and we have requirements to meet the maximum students per classroom, 15 in a preschool, 18 in a kindergarten, grades 1 to 4, 20 to 23. And that's really being pushed. We're trying to get to 5 classrooms per grade in the school, and the space really isn't there. There are areas that it is there because we have undersized classrooms. This is in what is considered the 40s wing. These 3, what would have been classrooms, are about half the size of what they're supposed to be. And then on site, there are some site issues that need to be dealt with. One that's not graphically represented here as well is the 40-year-old drain field that needs to be replaced. And it's usually drain fields don't make it that long. So well done. I don't know how you did it. The process. So the process of getting to here is we obviously added on to last year's effort. And we have, over the years, gone through facility conditions report and the prior studies. We looked at facility assessments. We had a steering committee, and of course, we have the conceptual design. So as David spoke about, for this year, we are looking at 2 projects, or it's broken down into 2 different categories. One is repairing the 60s wing. The second would be additions and other alterations to the school. So repairing the 60s wing, that would be taking care of the exterior insulation and siding, new windows and doors, new roof, new HVAC system. And then the additions being proposed would be library, cafeteria, music room, classrooms, additional classrooms, administration lobbies, space, and then of course the fire sprinklers, restrooms, and any other repairs that need to be made along the way. So I just want to reorient everybody. When we talk about the 80s wing, that is this block right along the main street connected to the gymnasium. The 60s wing with the deficient exterior walls is back here. And the 40s wing, which is the oldest part of the school, is on the west end of the school building. So in the 60s wing, really we need to start by taking this cinder block portion of building and putting a new skin on it. So that's what this representation is here, is a new skin. Brick, well, first of all, we put a layer of insulation that gets us up to the code values that were required. And then to make it fit in with the rest of the school, we clad it again in brick, and we can do a base in CMU to keep the cost down that is more decorative. And we put new windows in, a new roof, which needs to be replaced, also gets insulation. And then the HVAC system, the new mechanical system that will provide even COVID compliant ventilation throughout the room. We're going to be in a post-COVID world, God willing, but you know, we want to set the bar and make sure that we're getting the proper ventilation into the school. Again, looking at additions. So if we look at additions, we would be looking at adding an administrative area. In the back, there would be a new addition of wings of cafeteria, music, and library. And then we have an opportunity to infill a space over here for 2 more classrooms. You'll see that on the plan here in just a minute. So again, the plan, administrative area with the entry, which gives us a nice controlled access point. I'll look at that a little bit more closely later. Then we have the cafeteria. You can see it's positioned just off of the gymnasium. The kitchen is currently in this location, feeds to the cafetorium, so they use half of the gymnasium for cafeteria now. A new cafeteria and community room would be added to the back side of that, so we salvage what we can from the kitchen and its location and, you know, all the other pieces that go with that. And then we add the music room, library, and above the library 2 classrooms, which work great contiguous with the other 4th grade classrooms upstairs. And then this big green area circles around the terraced courtyard and provides a circulation. So we get a great circulation path throughout the school. Over on the west side here, there's a classroom that can be, currently this is just an open courtyard space. We can infill 2 classrooms fairly easily. There's 3 existing walls. So we have 1 exterior wall and a couple floors, and Keith McVeigh probably wants to talk more about the cost of that, but it's a great opportunity to keep that within the school and pick up 2 classrooms, you know, fairly easily. In this plan, we would utilize that as special education. And then as we add the other spaces around the school, it frees up some of the other parts of the school. So administration can move out of the space that they're currently in, and that can become academic support with really no more effort or no money that really needs to be put into the academic support area. And we just moved to the administrative area. Where there was a classroom, we need a connection through. We pick up some counseling rooms, psychology. The nurses station and the PE office can be pulled to the front of the school just off of the gym. And the nurse who is currently on the 2nd level on the furthest point from the school or from the administrative area, we would put them closer to the front. So it's an easy pick up and drop off for parents and without spreading anything throughout the school. And again, you'll see some little blue parts here. These kindergarten and 1st grade classrooms don't currently have bathrooms, and they should really have that. On the upper level, again, these are these upper level 4th grade classrooms. We cluster it with the 4th grade that's already there on top of the 60s wing. A 3rd grade classroom is picked up. We cluster that in this area. And then everything else essentially remains the same, aside from, we would be replacing the fire sprinklers or putting the fire sprinklers in. And then we've called for an add alternate in the plan. It just means that we hope to have enough money within the budget to be able to provide additional restrooms. You can see that there are, most of the kids are on the upper level and there are very few restrooms. So if we can add a block of restrooms, then it just, it makes the in-between time a lot easier for the students, for the teachers, and the entire school as it operates that way. So I'll just give you a quick overview of some of those specific areas. Again, at the front entry, we're looking at this element here is the new administrative area. Becomes a nice welcoming area for the front of the school. In plan, this is that entry. And now administration has a direct way to view anybody pulling up to the front of the school, anybody who enters, and then has a checkout or transaction window essentially to the entry space. Then once visitors are come into the school, they typically would come in and do a formal process of check-in here, and then they can be guided throughout the rest of the school. In the evening, if there is an event in the gymnasium, then the entry, the administrative area can be locked off and there's direct access right into the gymnasium. You can see some of these other remodeled spaces off to the side as well. For the, what we call the back part of the building off of the gymnasium, we have the new cafeteria, community room, music room, and additional restrooms, and 2 classrooms and the library space. So in plan, kind of touched on how that kitchen gets remodeled. We mirror it over so that they can serve into the cafeteria. Music room, which has been shifting around a few different places, gets a nice space, but it's away from the rest of the school, so it doesn't disrupt other classes that might be adjacent to it otherwise. We pick up the library. The library is nice because currently it consumes what could be 2 classrooms right in the center of the school. This allows us to have those 2 classrooms. It already has essentially the dividing wall. So the library can be out here where it's in a good place for the school because there's a good circular path, but it also works good for the community to utilize, let's say in the evening time, as well as the community events that might happen in the cafeteria. From the back of the building, this is your drop off and pickup area. There would be a little bit of site work we would do back there. And you can see that this piece of the back of the building is the 60s wing that we propose to do initially. And hopefully, as everything moves forward, this is the other 2 new classrooms and the rest of the library and classrooms and music room, so that we're thinking of this as a unifying theme or unifying materials, so that once the other components are added or brought into this this building, then they all go together and it doesn't look like a mismatch. We can make a distinction between the 40s, but we don't want to have a distinction between what happens this spring and what happens hopefully next summer. If you look at the overall budget, or in terms of where the money or effort is put, we need to put 21% into the remodeling and code deficiencies, 14% into site and infrastructure, academic support, which would also include special education, is 8%. Safety and security is 12% of that pie. And what is always nice to have in a school is most of the effort most of the dollars go toward learning environments. So new construction, we have the cafeteria, library, music room, classrooms, administration, and the main entry. And the remodeled areas, we have the 60s wing, the additional restrooms, special education and academic support, nurse's office, structural repairs, and fire sprinklers. So that is a good overview of what we have looked at, what we have gone through, as David spoke about, in revisiting anything that needed to be looked at a second time, and that's what we have identified, and that's what we propose for this year. So I'll turn that back over to David, I assume. Is that right?
Yep. Thanks, Craig.
You bet.
All right. So hopefully everybody's excited as I am. I think that's a really great plan. I appreciate all the hard work from the team on this. It satisfies a lot of the needs that we've talked about over the years, and we continue to expand on what's there for the kids in the community. So I'm going to go back to share. Just going to make sure you all can see right now, just the one slide. Everybody see it?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's talk about the 60s wing first. I think hopefully this is the easier of the conversation. But what we're proposing here for the 60s wing, as you can read here, is we want to move forward with a warrant article to utilize the $1.16 million from capital reserve that we have currently, that we've been building up for a number of years. This leaves the need for about $950,000 to come up with. And through talking with Dr. Metzler and Mr. Dowd, we think that there is additional opportunities for that $950,000 between this year's budget and next year's budget to challenge in opportunities for stuff that's in for maintenance right now. In talking to Mr. Mackey, that he is willing to and thinks it's a great idea to concentrate on this bigger issue that we're trying to solve and push some of the stuff off by a few years or a year. He also, in talking to Mr. Dowd, also believes, that we have potential grants and energy efficiencies that we can get reimbursements for if we move forward with this. And as I said, that there's just north of $2 million to complete this renovation. Bottom line, it's finally within our grasp. We're finally at that point that we can get the 60s wing done. We need the proposed budget to pass. And once that passes, there would be no additional increase to taxpayers because we'd be utilizing the capital reserve and living within our means of the proposed budget as we see it. So the action for this that we'll talk about at the end is we're going to look to the school board to discuss and vote on a warrant article to utilize the funds and move forward with this finally, get this done for the kids. As I know we've talked about, we need this, the kids need this, and it only makes the most sense. All right. I'm going to move on to the next slide here as soon as this thing moves. There we go. SAU proposal. All right. So we've talked about this SAU office as this could potentially be brought forward to the board. This is one example that, the team worked really hard to say, what can we do? And then said, well, we have to prioritize the real needs of the town, in the school, in the community, and everybody. And we said, right now, this is not the priority. Right now, we know we have places in town that we can rent. But when we looked at the cost of building a standalone building just for the SAU offices, this is just purely SAU offices, conference rooms, bathrooms, little kitchenette area, etc. That even at a decent interest rate, if we were to spread that cost over 30 years, it would still be more than double the cost of renting. So just think about that. If we were to do this cost, it just doesn't make sense. We don't think it should be prioritized. So while we wanted to look at this and we want to see how we could do this and say, does it make sense to build to own versus renting? And we looked at this, and right now it does not make sense. Maybe in the future, it's something we want to look at, but with the cost of what it takes to do all the site work, to bring in the building, et cetera, it doesn't make sense. It's not the right value for what we need to concentrate on. So the action here, there is no action. If we want to discuss it at the end, certainly we can discuss some more details of what that total cost was. and all the decisions that we had made and discussions throughout that. But at this time, we do not believe bringing a warrant forward or including this in the warrant makes sense for anybody. All right. All right. So just to recap a little bit what Craig said, and this is what we need for this addition, right? We need the adequate classroom space. I think we can all agree to that. We've heard about, we're very crunched for not only the classroom space for the typical grades, but also for individualized learning, for special ed. So we need that suitable individualized learning space. We need to keep our kids safe. We need to have centralized classrooms that are not spread around. We need that dedicated learning area. We need modernization in our learning spaces. Our facility, we're doing as much as we can. We had the DOE here and they gave us great kudos for maximizing everything we're doing. They gave us great kudos to Mr. Mackey for what he's been doing over the last year to keep up with maintenance and not deferring it. They communicated that a number of times. And again, we need sufficient facilities to support this existing and growing population. We are growing. This year we're going to have, I think it was a 10% increase in students. I forget exact numbers, but what it came to was we were going to have to take over half a library in order to satisfy, additional classroom needs. And we're turning kids away, parents in the community away from having their kids in our kindergartens here in school. We couldn't even satisfy those. So that's why we need this. We need this for the community. We need this for, this great town that we live in. All right. And that's where what we get, we get 6 classrooms out of this. We get a secured entryway, as we saw, that we can monitor who's coming in and coming out. We have a way to divert traffic to go into that gymnasium, where it's a dedicated gymnasium now. It's not shared. It's not shared amongst the music room and the lunchroom. It's a dedicated gymnasium. We get a dedicated lunchroom. We get these additional centralized bathrooms. We have that modernized library. And just as important as we get the special education room that we need, we have dedicated learning spaces for our kids to grow. There's a number of, the Ventures program and others that we want to provide our kids this dedicated area. We're not shifting them around in smaller rooms and closets. This gives us what we need as a school. So I can't highlight that enough. There's a lot that we need, and there's a lot we get out of this plan. All right. So want to know how we're going to get here. We're in this COVID state of mind right now with everything that's going on. We want to be safe. We want to be, do everything we can, but we still want to get the message out. We still want to get everybody somehow virtually into the school and virtually in a discussion and understanding. So today we need to pass this for the warrant. We need to pass a vote for the warrant. And then over the next 4 months, Megan and I are going to be head charging into this, organizing community outreach events, utilizing thought exchange, utilizing social media, creating many learning opportunities via Zoom, having intakes, having discussions. We'll conduct live walkthroughs of the school, highlighting the current needs during off hours. We'll walk around and show people. We'll create fun and interactive community involvement. We've got some really great ideas from other communities that have passed their warrants, things that we haven't done here. And we're learning by reaching out to other communities that have passed. Pretty excited about this one. Some great ideas we've heard from other communities for sure. We're going to hold contractor nights. We want to leverage local contractor capabilities as much as possible. So we will hold multiples of those. Gino and team from Trident have already said, here's something we can do. We can do this virtually. We can provide all the information and start that process. And there's going to be more ways we're going to get this out. We're going to keep on going strong, even with COVID going on right now. We know it's a pandemic. We know there's a lot going on in our community with the environment. But we're still going to head charge into this, and we have full faith we're going to get this passed by involving the community, by doing more than we've ever done. Just leverage what the strong school board has done in the past and keep moving with it. So the next slide is on cost. So now it's going to come down to what everybody wants to know. It's great to hear this, but now what's the cost? So here's the cost. For the addition alone, cost $9.07 million. This would commence in the fall. We do have additional opportunities of taking some cost out. Now, we've already removed over $2 million from what was originally there when we began meeting in the early fall and late summer with Trident and the administration. We've already removed 2 million plus, and we did this by focusing on the functionality and the needs of the school. Again, this is where, you know, we're coming to the town to say, we heard you, we are taking costs out. We've looked at areas where it makes sense to take it out and make trade-offs that continue that functionality. We have other potential savings. We have grants, energy efficient reimbursements. If we run this concurrently with the 60s wing, I think we save another $250,000 just in that alone. So there's more money that we can save to get that $9 million down, but can't say it enough. We have to pass a warrant to get this. We've talked about this in the past. There's a state reimbursement. We had a great meeting, I believe, last week with the DOE, where they walked through everything. We talked about just what's the process. It is a labor-intensive process, but we're going into it. We're fighting for what we can, which means we submitted for 30%. So that means if we pass a warrant and we're chosen, we get 30% of our cost back. Again, can't say it enough. There has to be a warrant passed, and we have to be chosen. Now, it's still a long shot to be chosen. There are a number of other communities looking for this money also, and it's only if the legislature passes the money for it. So still a long shot, but we're doing everything we can to be in consideration. Okay, I didn't finish my sentence on when I was typing this out, but this includes just going through all the safety needs, all the needs of the school. We walked the DOE through this. The DOE had said, you know, before coming to our school and doing a walkthrough, they questioned some of the things that they had read. But then when they saw the visual and they saw how creative we've been, how much we've been on our maintenance, they were very their attitudes changed towards our school. I don't know if that means we bump up 2 or 3 schools, but I have a strong feeling we definitely got bumped up based on everything we walked through and saw. We got a good, I'd say a positive response from the DOE, but they were also very realistic of the challenges with getting state reimbursement this year with the COVID environment, et cetera. But we won't know this until later on in sometime in the first half of this year about how that process is going, and when it's passed by the legislature. They said we could probably hear something more in January, February about if there's any money, and then we can start hearing more. But unfortunately, it won't happen most likely until after the warrant is voted on. So I'll leave it like this. With a warrant article for consideration to the voters, and if it passes, we can finally give the kids and the community what's needed. Something we've been working on. We took a year off to recap and just get back to brass tactics of what's needed. And so that's the action here. And I'm sure there's questions. There will be some discussion. There'll be some up and downs in the discussion. But lastly, just the action. We need the school board to discuss and vote on this warrant article. We need to bring forward this warrant article. We need to move forward with this for the school, for the kids. This is what they need. It's not what we want. It's not like we're getting extras that aren't going to be utilized. This is what's going to serve us for many years to come. And that's what I've got, Caitlin.
Okay. Thank you very much for that, David, and for our additional construction team members. So yeah, as David said, I think we can open this up to questions. I have a couple, although they're pretty low key, so I can start unless somebody else wants to jump in. Okay, I'm starting then. So as I know that this might be a little bit early in this process to ask, but any discussion about length of the bond, or do we have any idea? Well, and do we have any idea on interest rate opportunities? And again, you guys may not have this yet, and that's totally fine. I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, I can answer a couple of those. We've talked about a 10-year bond. We think that's the most appropriate. With a 10-year bond, that's for $9 million. That keeps it under that $1 million a year, and the repayment, with some interest, of course. What it would be about, and I'll put more about the tax impact to a $400,000 home. It would be approximately, and I'm going to give an approximate, it's just south of $300 a year. So for the low cost of $26 a month, we can have this renovation passed for the addition. And again, this is not including the 60s wing. This is the addition. Okay, so two different discussions, two different warrants, but this would mean $316 or less. So for a $400,000 home per year.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. Dowd, for helping with that. He went above and beyond. I can't say it enough. He's done a lot of greatness over the last couple of weeks for us on this. In this one, he came out, and thank you, Mr. Dowd.
Welcome.
Okay, board members, do we have other people with questions? Okay, I'll keep going then, because I have a couple more. So as you mentioned, David, and I just want to make sure that I'm clear on all of this, we'd be talking about two separate warrant articles. The warrant article specifically for the 60s wing would be, I'm assuming, would just be worded, and this may be something Jeff has to answer too.
Yep.
The wording on that warrant article would be to ask that we utilize, that we release the funds from capital reserve to utilize the 1.16. And then additional funding would not be in that wording because we'd be talking about budgetary numbers.
With the current
Correct?
budget, yes, with the current budget that we just voted on bringing to warrant, that additional funds would be out of that. So you are correct in what that first warrant
Okay.
would be voted on.
Okay. And that means because it's not a bond, it's a straight 50% plus one
Yes,
needed.
correct.
I do have to say I'm although it's a 9.07 million is a big number, I'm definitely impressed with what this group has done because I've worked on this on past years and we're actually, you're within this number, although that 9 million takes out the 60s wing, we are adding 2 classrooms that weren't discussed, that were not included previously in that, or hopefully 2 more classrooms to bring us to 6. Because I know in the past too, that has been some question that people in town have brought up about, well, we need more classroom space, and it didn't immediately seem like we were doing that, even though we were still adding 4 classrooms when you look at what the changes would be to the current library. But I'm not discounting at all that it's a big number. It is. It's always going to be a big number, but frankly, I was preparing myself for a higher number because I know how these costs increase every year. So
Yeah, I just want to call out
kudos
again.
to everyone for. Yeah,
That's exactly. It's a great call out to everyone on the call, and to just know that this team has worked hard on, looking at the numbers, taking out what doesn't make sense right now, things that we said, okay, that could be done in future years under maintenance, under additional funds as needed. But again, we didn't sacrifice anything. We didn't sacrifice anything here in this. We've built upon it. Of course, it's more than past years because of inflation and additional cost. Material cost this year. Everybody knows you go buy a 2x4 right now, you're paying 3 to 4 times the cost on a 2x4. Those material costs are there right now. We do think that's another opportunity that we can get the cost down. But right now we have to, bring it to the vote of what those current dollars are. So, but again, kudos to Gino, Caitlin, Keith, and Craig, and the administration for really just being very surgical on this.
thank you. Anybody else?
Are we voting on this tonight?
I know that when we're
think
done
That's the
discussion, I
intention.
want to, yeah, that's the intention, Jim.
We're going to have a budget discussion And so the budget, the information that we were given that probably will be presented now will change, correct, Jeff? If to include this as a possibility. We haven't seen that, right? We haven't seen those
N-
numbers.
No, Jim,
On-
we're not going to increase our budget. We've had discussions with Mr. Dowd and Dr. Metzler. We're not going to be increasing our budget request that we just voted on a couple weeks ago to pass forward in the warrant because of this. We're going to utilize what's there today. And I can share back on the slide some of the places that we're saying that there's opportunities there that we're going to, take advantage of.
Yeah, we haven't seen that, so I don't even know what that is. I don't know what changes the school is being asked to make, or the schools or whatever to take out. So you're saying you're gonna take out 950 out of the budget?
We're going to utilize existing funds either that are carried in this year or next year's. As an example, we have between $300,000 and $400,000 in maintenance cost that Mr. Mackey, and we've reviewed with him to say some of those costs, if we were to move those to be part of the 60s wing, that pays for almost half of that. And he's on board voluntarily, so to do the 60s wing versus some of the maintenance that we can do the following year. And that goes back to Mr. Dow believes that there's grants and energy efficiency rebates that we'll be able to receive with the 60s wing that'll allow us to bring that dollar figure down even more.
Caitlin, can we have that discussion first and then come back to this with Jeff? Because he's supposed to present next, correct?
Yes, I mean, we could move it around if you would prefer.
Well, I see the document that he.
Or Jeff can just,
I'm sorry.
sorry. I mean, if Jeff wants to speak to it now, he can. I don't think that we have any issue. I mean, I realize it's budget related, which is not quite where we are yet, but I mean, it's in relation to this. So I mean, if Jeff's good with it, I don't see an issue with him talking about it now.
I'm okay to move on to, well, to complete the discussion on this and then move on to the discussion on budget and we can go through that at that time.
I think we were talking about.
Okay.
What? Go ahead.
Caitlin, if I could.
No, go ahead, Jim. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Metzler, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically, I think the request is to table the action, complete the budget discussion, and then return to the action.
Correct.
Which you could do. Right?
Okay.
But we have a safe learning update
Yeah,
that's it's bracketed by these two agenda
Right.
items. We have some juggling to do, I guess, if looking at the item, the order of events, I guess. So take a look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
Okay, so here's my suggestion then. Would people be comfortable voting on the first item or talking about the 60s wing piece right now? We table the addition project, that's just what I'm going to call it right now, until we get to the budget, which is our third item under current business. So we're not like, we're just moving it down. Is that okay?
Well, my question more revolved around how the 950 affects the budget. Because I would like to hear that from Jeff, whatever changes are going to take
Okay.
place.
Okay, I don't think that needs to happen in the budget discussion then. I think we can talk about that now.
All right, then Jeff needs to talk about it, I guess, right?
Sure.
Sure.
So I think David had mentioned earlier that we're looking at some opportunities for what I would expect to be grant funding, energy efficiency grants that should help to offset some of the expense associated with the renovation just on the 60s wing. And the costs right now are probably relatively high. So I think that the cost right now, we're at a peak for construction. I think David had hit on that as well. So those are really two critical areas. We're not going to make up 950,000 that way, but certainly, the board can, as we move forward, take a look at what options there are in the budget to fund that based on what the anticipated costs are at the time. I think that we're at a very high point right now for construction costs. We've got to go with the estimates that we have. So we may realize some savings, and we probably have some offsets coming in from revenue that we'd have to have a public hearing on to receive to be able to apply toward the cost of the project at the time. If that makes sense.
Right. So in a nutshell, the 950. See, what I'm getting at, I would like to know what's going to be cut from the budget. What lines are changing? Because that's what we're saying, right? The 950 is coming from the budget. Some of it is coming from, the changes to the 60 wing. So we don't have to invest in some of those changes on our own. It's going to be coming from the construction.
Yeah,
You want me to help you with this a little bit quickly?
Well, yeah, just real quick, I think it's just important to note, excuse me, that at the end of the day, if this type of project passes, we have money in our facilities maintenance budget as it is anyway, and this would become a single purpose project. We'd still attend to whatever maintenance needs came up, but we would put off any major projects until this project was underway or incomplete. So, Dr. Metzler?
Yeah, I think his question was more what's going to be cut from the budget, and the answer to that is it's a simple nothing is going to be cut from the budget.
Right.
The budget that's the hey, for lack of a better, that's the $1 million question, right? Or the $950,000 question. But it's not about a cut. I guess I don't want to mislead anybody to think that we're cutting anything out of the budget. There isn't anything coming out.
A redirection of resources or focus on this project, for example, from our facilities department, our facilities budget, puts a lot of resources into this type of a project. And obviously we spend money every year on maintenance and improvement of our buildings, generally just maintenance of our buildings and keeping our systems going. This is just a major component that we would end up directing a lot of that budget to as well. Not all of it. I don't think that it's fair to say there'd be any cuts though. I agree with you, Dr. Metzler.
No, and so people, will ask sometimes, where's this money coming from? And there's the surplus, right? There's the unspent money annually, comes from lots of different lines. And every year those lines, some of them are the same, but some of them are not the same because different things happen. For instance, if it doesn't snow all year, obviously you have money left over in the snow removal budget. And so, that money comes from a number of different places when you start to talk about surplus and challenging a budget with money to support a capital improvement. So I think it'd be very difficult. I don't know, Jeff, very difficult to tell you exactly where all of that 950 is going to come out of that budget, correct?
Cuts aren't contemplated though. I think that redirection of resources would be.
Yeah, so it's semantics, but it's important semantics because it's not about cutting the budget, right?
So if our default and our other budget are similar, this project can happen anyways.
It could. Yeah, it could. If it were voted on through the warrant.
The risk,
I did also want to,
the risk is,
go ahead, Dr. Metzler.
yeah, the risk is really you need both the warrant to pass and the proposed budget to pass, right? That's the risk.
Right.
So also, I want to clarify, because I think also what I'm hearing both from what David put forward is we're almost, this 950 potentially is also has the ability to come from 2 budget cycles. Is that correct? So essentially, like what Dr. Metzler just mentioned, we have a surplus at the end of this budget year.
Right. That
money could be utilized, if I'm understanding this correctly, and somebody just yell if I'm saying it wrong. And then, so it's not necessarily 950 coming from one budget year.
Correct.
Right? Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct.
Correct. So Yeah.
Right, 'cause-
So if we had money in our budget for facilities for summer projects in this past, out of this year's budget, that
Yeah.
money would be directed toward this single purpose project until it's complete. We wouldn't neglect anything that needs to be done, but we've done a lot of work, and we, you know, if we do a new project or where this is the project, then resource would be directed
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, and Jeff, you had mentioned before when we talked actually yesterday about this, just to give an idea to kind of help Jim a little bit with what you're asking, Jim, is, you know, this past year with the tarring of the middle school, that was allocated for some things we're going to be doing in the coming years, or maybe even the next year. We don't have to spend as much as we thought we were going to. So now that's where it's not cutting it. We've already been able to, you know, save on opportunity cost there, in that what we were going to be funding and allocating towards those is now not needed for that. So we can allocate that to the 60s wing instead. So that's just one of, you know, other areas that we're trying, you know, we're looking at how do we fund the 60s wing.
Yeah, the other, Caitlin, if I could, it's the
Mhm.
timing of this
Yeah.
project, if you think about it, because you vote and approve a budget in March, you know, and then you always hear this term shovel ready. You know, the project will be ready to go pretty quickly because we've been working on this for quite some time. So there's like an overlap, right? You're already into the next year's budget after July 1, and that's when the work would start. But you could certainly, you'd be looking at the end of this year's budget before the project started. So it's a, you know, we talked about, you know, how much money up front would the building team need to get started, and then how would you pay? Obviously, the project would be finished, and you'd be looking at a final payment. So those percentages, I'm not sure if it's 50% and 50% when it's completed, or if it's 30 and 40, or however you break that down. But the timing of it's good because of when the vote takes place and how the budgets kind of, they don't overlap, but they overlap in terms of when the project is taking place. If that makes sense. That's what puts the two budgets. That gives you an opportunity to fund it in 2 cycles, right?
Any other questions or comments from anyone on the board on the 60s wing?
Just one more thing, Dr. Metzler or Jeff or anybody. I'm not an expert on warrants. Go over the risks again about the budget. So the default, the regular budget, and this, and how it ties to this warrant for this 60s wing.
Well, the risks are the obvious one of, obviously you need the warrant article to pass and the proposed budget to pass. And then you have, you know, the no means no, which in the event that one of them didn't pass, you know, that's a pretty loud no for the project, right? So, you know, that's the risk. And then, you know, I think we have some assumptions that there'll be some money available, and I do believe that those are really on solid ground. But Jeff, you could talk a little bit more about assessing the risk.
Right. So Jim, I will agree that you need the warrant to pass. And the interesting thing about the warrant is it's really not. I hate to say it because I don't want to come to criticism for it, but there's really no taxpayer impact. This capital reserve fund that we have has been built up over the years, and we had approved a large contribution to that fund this year in the amount of $400,000. That really helped boost the balance, and it allows us to contribute to that over time, so that when a large project comes along, we have the resources to be able to put toward the project, minimizing the tax impact, you know, in the year in question as much as possible. So it would be imperative that warrant article pass. And if the warrant article didn't pass, and we were not able to undertake the work, we would continue doing the maintenance projects that we have lined up. To David's point, what he had mentioned earlier, we were looking at some significant and serious paving projects at the middle school, because the entry road off School Street was just so torn up. It was really going to run into some money. We wouldn't just be doing that piece of it. We would be doing a much larger piece of it up into the side parking lot as well, which would have gone into 6 figures easily, for example. And because we're able to partner with the town, and the town was able to make the opportunity available to us, I think the project cost less than $20,000 and really bought us some time to be able to address this project if it comes up, without having to have a large expenditure hanging over our heads for the upcoming year. If it doesn't pass, we have projects that we do have lined up that we would be getting done. If it does pass, then we would direct our resources to that project. whatever budget we had from the current year in facilities, for example, and we would be directing some money in the subsequent year, in the budget year that we're talking about right now, into that project, and hopefully looking for some savings and looking for some additional revenue as well from grants and potential other money-saving energy efficiency type arrangements that we could come to. So, Jim, I don't know if that helps, but again, if the warrant doesn't pass, then everything's off the table. If it does pass, then we would be able to look into our own budget and see what maintenance we can reschedule or reshuffle, if you will, in order to get this project done. This is a big project and it's long overdue. I don't think anyone disagrees with that.
I think just to add to that, that part of the risk is that, that warrant is only a 50% +1, like Caitlin had mentioned earlier. So that's, we do got to get that 50% in order to pass this warrant to use the capital reserve funds. That's the risk.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to also have the budget discussion to know exactly where we were with the percent on the budget. I mean, to get a no, even if the default budget was the same as this budget, right? Someone might think, whatever, it's the same. People voted no, you didn't get your project. The default budget is the same anyways. But when you get a no, that hurts, right? And that will hurt if we put up the project next year. So I'm kind of thinking of long-term. Hey, listen, I'm going to be right off the cuff. That's who I am. I am a no for the big project. I have always been for it, and I always will be for it. And if 3 of you pass it, I will vote for it and I'll get involved. I just think it's the wrong year. With COVID, kids out of school, people out of work, assessments on houses, taxes, to try to do this before March, we can't knock on the doors. We can't have the seniors in for tea. We can't do any of the canvassing that we really should do. I mean, to have a get out the vote campaign, this would have to be the best campaign that this town has ever run. All these groups that haven't gotten involved in the past would need to get involved. I am all for this project. I love it. I love to see, I get jazzed up when I see those designs for the kids, the cafeteria, the music room, the extra space for the kids and for the staff. I just think it's the wrong year. So part of my discussion about the budget is I would hate to get a no, because a no can affect you next year, right? What I would like to see, I would like to see us make a decision to say, let the next board make the decision. And that's only in March, right? And I'll be on that board and I'll say, yes, we'll have a whole year to canvass the town, to get the Mothers Club, the Kiwanis Club, all these groups that use the school, all these groups that work with our children. We'll be able to get the seniors in for a tea, the tours of the school, the vaccine will be out, right? People will get, they'll get energized that this economy is going again. People will be back to work, I just think it's the wrong time. And I wouldn't want to get a no on anything, because I think it will affect us next time, right? And to put up something so big right now is, I don't know, I think for some in this community, it's going to be a slap in the face. And I don't want to get a no, because we've been put this up so many times. If we're going to do it, we got to do it right. It's just the wrong year. That's what I think. And that's why I'm talking about the budget, because I would hate for this to be a no, because it's going to affect us next year. So I don't know. That's it.
But Jim, if I may, were you talking about the 60? We were talking about the 60s project. Then you mentioned the big. You're talking about the bigger project. You would hate for that to be a no, or the 60s?
No, I would hate for this to be a no. I believe that the other project will be a no for what it has to pass at, and the amount of money and the amount of time we have in COVID and all the restrictions with any type of get out the vote campaign. No, I am talking about the 950,000, right?
Oh, okay.
Even if it doesn't pass and people say, and they don't want the project, are they going to get their default budget anyways? That no will affect us down the road. Good luck putting up something next year. I don't know. You can ask.
So Jim, we've already got a really good response from the groups. Megan and I for the last month have been reaching out to those groups you've mentioned. we've got a really good response about going to their meetings, and they're open to it for the first time. So I would say so far, while I'm not going to say we're going to get 60% in March, who knows? Flip a quarter if you want, but we're getting good responses from the groups that we've asked to come and talk. We're not asking them to vote for it. We're asking to talk and have the discussion and educate the voters. And so far, we've got, I'd just say, a really good response from the groups. We had a group that reached out to Caitlin that we hadn't even thought of and said, hey, can you come and talk to us? We hear the renovations coming down the pipe. We want you to come in January to talk to us because we think it's important and we want to educate our groups. So we're already getting people that are excited about it, interested in it. And you're right, it's going to have to be the best damn path forward we've ever had. And we're doing that. We've done a lot of work over the last 3 months to build this foundational steps. And you say you're afraid to say, get a no, but if we get a no right now, then it's a definite no. If go forward, who knows if we're going to get a no or a yes. But I'm telling you right now, we have the best team in front of this, and we're moving forward. We're charging with this. And so far, I understand the pandemic right now puts a big shadow over this. But when we go back to the cost of $300 a year or less, we're going to iron out that exact, but $300 a year or less for a $400,000 home, that's what the message is here. And it's been the message in the past. It's been passed as a no, but you know what? We're moving forward with it as long as the board votes. And we're going to keep on pushing. I don't see anything from the pandemic to say don't go forward with this because I honestly feel if people say no, you're saying that you want the kids to take over the library for their classrooms. You want them to continue to have to split that cafeteria up into 3 different ways to serve what's needed. That's not what we want as a community. We want to celebrate this community. We want to celebrate this school. We want to have that new school to flourish with a growing population. Our population here is only growing. We've seen that year after year. And, I'm really afraid that we're not only going to have to take over the library, we're going to have to look at, doing something even more creative, like taking over the gymnasium or something, if we keep pushing this down. And that's what we're doing with this conversation is we're continuing to punt this down another year to say, well, what happens next year? What happens next year? We have it here in our grasp. And if we say no, then anybody that says no is saying we want our kids to take over the library and we don't want to give them a proper education.
Hi, Caitlin.
Yep, go ahead, Karen.
Hi. I agree with some of what's been said, and I don't agree with other things that have been said. Been part of this project for over 6 years. It's 6 years since I've been on the board. We've worked on this, and the plan that was presented tonight, I don't think it's much different than what we've seen before. I agree that we have the best team working on this. They were the best team 3 years ago when we brought in Gino Baroni and Trident and Craig Jones. I worked with them. I worked with them for the last 3-4 years when they were brought on. They do an excellent job. They kept costs down for us. The plan I heard tonight, I see very little difference in that plan that we had before. I see maybe two additional classrooms and some additional bathrooms on the second floor. Other than that, unless I'm missing something, and Craig, if you're still there too, you can tell me, but unless I'm missing something, this is the exact same plan that we've tried to put forward before. And when we did it in years past, there was no pandemic, as Jim has said. We've gone knocking door to door. I personally went to people in town. I personally went to the police chief. I went to the fire chief to see if he would speak in favor of the fire suppression system in the school. I went to our building inspector, who's also our code enforcement inspector, and our health officer. I asked them to come and speak publicly in favor of this at the deliberative. No one would come. One selectman came. I spoke to both Chad Bennett. I spoke to Sean Murphy. Neither one at the time would come and speak in favor of our schools or in favor of our kids. At that time, the only person who came who held the town office was Joe Guthrie. So the only thing that's really changed in this, I think, is the price. This didn't pass in the best of times. This did not pass when there was no pandemic. This did not pass when we could go door to door to people. And we've had the teas. We had a senior forum at the Central School. We gave tours for a couple of weekends in a row. And as for the contractor night, that's not new either. We did that and no one showed up. We have tried everything that's being presented that you want to try again in the next 3 months. We've been doing that for 3 years with this plan, and it hasn't passed. So I'm very hesitant to think that it's going to pass this year. When people are out of work, when taxes have gone up, I agree with Jim 100%. I don't think that this is the time. I always said that this doesn't have to do with going to your groups. It doesn't actually have to go to the plan. This is about a mind shift in town. People in town have to be willing to spend their money and their resources and give it over to the school. And they weren't able to do that when things were good. So I really am hesitant to believe that they're going to do it this year when times are tough for people. Family times, kids home, learning, remote learning, people out of work. I don't think it's going to happen. I just think it's the wrong time to ask. So I, like Jim, I won't be voting for this year. Not because we don't need it, but we needed it in the past and it didn't pass. So I just don't see it happening this year. And I just think it's the wrong year. Sorry. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Karen. We heard, from board members in August, the same discussion about we shouldn't move forward with it. So we understand this is a hard year. Not saying it isn't. We'll never sugarcoat and say it's roses and unicorns and everything else out there. It's going to be hard. And some of it we've done in the past. Some of it we haven't. We do get 30% more classrooms than we did before. There are changes that compared to the previous. Are they 100% flipping the entire thing? No, but there's tweaks, there's mods, there's been discussions about it, and I can't see not putting it to the vote. So I don't know, any more questions? I mean, we still have Gino and team on. Of course, we've got Jeff, Dr. Metzler, Mr. Flynn. I believe Mr. Mackey is around. If anybody has questions about what we've done and anything else in the plan.
I think I have a question that you've touched on, but I just want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly. If Mr. Mackey's available to
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
talk.
I had
Thanks,
to
Mike.
promote him.
Okay. Basically, I just want to, as Mike's promoting him, I'm gonna talk for a second. I think he's there. We're talking about we should be able to move some funds if needed. So, Mr. Mackey, my question for you is just that you've done a lot in, frankly, not a long time. You've been with us just over a year to really make sure that our systems and our maintenance and everything is up to par. So I do want to ask you if you see anything on the horizon that we would have to defer should we need to take funds for let's say specifically for the 60s wing piece. I think that was like a long-winded question. Essentially,
Yeah,
do you have any concerns about deferred maintenance that we would
I
have
don't
to do?
see anything major, short term right now. So like David had made, the statement earlier, I do believe that, a bunch of the projects that I wanted to get done and I will eventually get done, I think that, it doesn't hurt to push them off one more year. Whether it's taking the asbestos out of the library. It's been there for, a couple of decades. And I can still do a couple of small renovations to certain areas that do need attention. So, I mean, it's nothing, I don't see anything that major, that pressing. We've gone this far, one more year won't hurt in most aspects. And again, I can still do a lot of, little bit of projects here and there, chip away at stuff, start stuff, as long as my entire budget doesn't get wiped out. So.
Right. And I would certainly not support anything that did that. We don't want to do that.
I appreciate
We don't want to
that.
put maintenance in that position.
Yeah, and
No,
I mean, I'm all for moving forward as long as we're seeing some sort of progress, whether it's the central school that hasn't had much of anything done, and the middle school. As long as something is getting done, I think that's the initial outcome.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mackey. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I mean, I can't say that I don't have some similar concerns to what Jim and Karen have voiced. And frankly, for me, it's more a couple of things. Are we asking too much of the town in a year that we're all admitting is a difficult year? Just as Karen mentioned, there's a lot of us who have been involved in this for a very long time, predating actually being on the board. So, I mean, this is just to echo, I don't think anybody on this board doesn't support getting things done at Central School. There's a little bit of a what if of, if the large portion of this project is put up and it doesn't pass, and perhaps doesn't pass by a large amount, does that hurt efforts going forward? And that is absolutely a concern I have. Some of that is because how difficult it's been to get to that 60%. Just a hard number to get to. So I have trepidation there for sure. At the same time, I voted last year to put off putting something up on a warrant. And that was a hard vote for me to take last year, to not put anything up. And, to some extent, I also think, what is the harm of putting it up? If it fails, it fails. That's frankly not a whole lot different than past years. But as I already said, if it's a big number that we're under that threshold, how does it impact things going forward? Probably not helpful, but that's where my mind is right now, is trying to factor this out a little bit. I think we should start, we have two different warrants here that we're discussing. So if we don't have more questions, I think we need to start with the warrant for the 60s wing. I'm probably going to butcher how to say this. Jeff, I might need your help with some wording here for a motion, because we're talking about capital reserve funds.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm thinking a motion would need to be motion to move to the warrant, or move forward a warrant item would it be to use the 1.16 million, or is it to release those funds? I don't know.
To move forward on a project which would be supplemented by 1.16 million drawdown from the capital reserve fund. And we can make sure that the language is legally, that references the fund by its legal name.
Right. I know we'll clean this up for whatever is actually on the warrant.
Right.
But because the 2.095 for the total project, that wouldn't be in the motion. That wouldn't even be in the warrant, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We would just be supplementing the project cost by getting the capital reserve withdrawal.
Right. Really, this item is to release those funds or draw down those funds.
Really would be authorizing the expenditure of the 1.16 million for the project, which would be offset by the capital reserve revenue withdrawal.
Okay.
I don't know if that confused things more.
Yeah. No, I got it, but I'm trying. Melissa, do you like sort of have something there? I feel like we do this to you a lot. I do this to you a lot.
I have something kind of taking formation. So something like, I was just listening to what Jeff was just saying, the last thing, to authorize the expenditure of 1.16 million for the project, which would be offset by capital reserve revenue.
Yes, or withdrawal.
Withdrawal.
Yep.
Okay, so the motion would be to move to the warrant this item, I think.
Yep.
Right, because we're not
Yes.
voting, yeah, because we're not voting on the expenditure, we're voting to move the question to the warrant.
Yeah, to move to warrant and authorize the expenditure, something to that effect.
Okay. So I think we'd be looking for a motion to move to warrant the use and expenditure of 1.16, whatever Melissa just said. I'm sorry. We've gone back and forth and now I'm losing my train of thought about what this needs to say.
1.16 million.
Yep. From capital reserve or offset by capital reserve.
Yeah, 1.16 million for the project, which would be offset by capital reserve revenue withdrawal.
I mean, that sounds good to me.
It's probably good enough to move it, and we can correct any legal aspects of it prior to finalization.
Okay. Okay, so that's the motion we're looking for. Let's start there. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Melissa, did you get that? That was Megan.
No, I didn't. Thank you. Okay.
Any final questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, Melissa, will you please call the roll? Vote.
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
No.
Mrs. Jasenka.
No.
Okay. The motion does carry. We have 3 in favor, 2 opposed.
Okay. So now let's move to the second item. First of all, what are we calling this? The addition package or the we need a name. Not a catchy name, just the name right now.
HSC renovations, please.
Okay. Okay.
Or addition, sorry, HCS addition.
Okay. Okay, so then we'd be looking for a motion to move to the warrant the proposed HCS addition at 9.07 million. I think, right? That sounds right. That one's a little easier.
So moved.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further questions or comments?
Just make one additional comment we hadn't talked about too much was we've been talking about it's not the right time because of cost. If this does not pass, we want to talk about cost. We would be anticipating $1.25 million more needed for this next year, the next vote for this plan, for the expected escalation, as well as cost savings we would get if we do that we wouldn't get if we do this concurrently with the 60s wing, if that passes. So just, we talk about costs, we talk about how important that is, which it is. By voting yes, it actually takes cost out in the future of doing the same plan. No different than in the past when it said no, and the community voted no. But this is getting, outrageously huge dollars that we keep kicking the can down. And right now, with the same plan, again, it would be over, just, $10.25 to $10.5 million next time. So just putting that out there for everyone to understand when we talk about cost, and if that's the driving factor, it's going to get even bigger every year going forward as it has. So
Thank
all
you,
I got.
David.
Yep.
Caitlin?
Any other comments? Oh,
Yeah.
yep.
I just want to say, I agree with David. This goes up every year. That's not new. This plan actually has gone back almost 15 years before it was even in the hands of the architects. We had other firms involved, and that's a given. David's right. It goes up every year, and the cost will go up. But this particular year, there are other factors that come into play other than just cost. For me, I think it's the ability or inability to reach out, to get everyone involved. You're doing this within 3 months. Those of us who worked on it before know we worked on this year round. There was one year we were standing up at July 4th. We had a booth. That's when, Hampstead kids are worth it. We've gone through several slogans, several branding of the project, and it hasn't worked. So it isn't just the cost. Like I said before, I think you have to include an entire mind shift in this town. And I just don't think in the middle of COVID, with what parents have been experiencing with school and all the changes and finances, people out of work and stuff, it's just the wrong time. Cost aside, it's just not the year to expend more time and resources and ask our community to do the same thing. I just don't feel it's the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Any further comments or questions?
None for me.
Okay, seeing none. Melissa, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
No.
Mrs. Yusenka.
No.
Motion carries 3 in favor, 2 opposed.
Thank you, Melissa.
Caitlin, if I may, before
Okay.
before we move away from those two articles, on the first article on the 60s wing, I will reach out to council and make sure that we have that stated correctly. I want to make sure that if the entire expenditure needs to be stated as part of that warrant article, that the board is aware of that. We are funding the 1.16 from the capital reserve and the balance out of the operating budget to some degree, along with cost savings and additional revenue. So I'll get an answer on that for the board, and you can reconsider if it changes the structure of the warrant article itself.
Okay. Jeff, do you mind when you reach out to legal on that, can you also ask, I think we've maybe talked about this before and maybe we've even already had an answer. Are we allowed to put language in that says something along the lines of this does not represent additional funds needed, or something to the effect of not going to raise your taxes more. I know we sort of talked about that before. I think we've run into issues where you just can't put it in there. But I don't know, if you're reaching out to legal anyways, maybe just see what they say.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a little bit less of an impact, but I think that the DRA and legal have shied away from including any language like that in the warrant articles
Right.
in particular. And typically it's in the context of the capital reserve contribution, because if that doesn't get voted in, then it gets returned to the taxpayers. And so to say that there's no additional tax impact, well, that's true, but the following year it doesn't go back in
Right.
surplus. So with this one in
Right.
particular, the 1.16 coming out of capital reserve, there would be no tax impact, but I'll check. I still think they favor not including anything like that.
Yeah. I think we've maybe asked before because we were trying to figure out some other stuff in past years, but
Caitlin,
maybe we can try to make it clear. Yes, Dr. Metzler.
yeah, the language is pretty prescriptive, so and they become tighter and tighter on the language. So they'll clean it up. If it's something we can't do, they'll tell us. For sure. It's got to pass both legal and obviously beyond that DRA, right? So
Yep.
But the language,
Thank
we're
you.
not the first people to write up this. It's not the first warrant article that was written like this. So I'm sure. I guess.
Yeah.
It'll be-
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I think we're all set with renovations, that discussion. So we are on to the Safe Learning Plan update. Mr. Flynn, I think.
Thank you. So this evening we have a few updates, continuing our trend of a couple important topics. And I know Dr. Metzler is going to go ahead and lead us off here.
Yeah. So we yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So I don't know if you've been how many people have been following our dashboard. We certainly been using the COVID Now website, and one of the reasons that we did not want to commit to metrics early on, because if we had committed to any metrics, we'd be so close so many times over, right? So our plan really wasn't focused on metrics, and I know that didn't feel so good to some people early on in late August, early September. But now that we're looking at the metrics and all around us, but our Hampstead bubble is still solid. We've added an additional color. What we didn't add, the COVID Now did, is maroon, so it goes from a red to a maroon. And I do believe that will be if and when any county or state, if we get beyond 75 people per 100,000. So although the metrics don't look very good, I am pleased to let you know that our schools are doing great. And again, the administrative staff, the teachers, the paras, all the staff, and certainly the students are adhering to all the safety procedures, and so our bubble is still solid. So I bring up the metrics because I don't want people to be scared by the metrics. We believe our plan is solid, and we're carrying on. Our only risk again is when staffing gets strained. That's our biggest concern. If we get to a point where we can't staff it safely, we'll certainly communicate that and make those changes as necessary. But for now, we'll continue to update those metrics and on the board, but we're not using those to make any decision. We're really looking at Hampstead as a bubble and looking at the really good work, I have to say, that again, that the administrative staff, along with the teachers, the paras, and all the staff and the students and families have really done a nice job. You approved early on in our plan kind of a built-in quarantine following the Christmas holidays. So I think that will help protect us too. Although the metrics again won't look so great in Rockingham County and around us, I think hopefully, knock on wood, we're hoping that Hampstead can keep that bubble solid and be able to move on. Now, I don't want to get people's hopes up too much, but we are looking, after February vacation, we're hoping, we're hoping that we'll be able to come back with a phase 3. We're really going to have to take a good hard look into January about what that January 19th looks like. But right now, our hope is that we'll be right back in the hybrid model, and then planning and we're working obviously with HEA and HAS on what that could look like. Perhaps following February vacation. Talking late winter, early spring, and so we're hopeful. We're very hopeful. We're So that's really the metrics dashboard. That's the reason that's on there. I didn't want, as people are following that, I didn't want that to scare people in terms of we're not allowing the metrics to force us into any kind of decision. Our plan was well thought out. It's been strategic. They're executing it beautifully at both buildings, and we're very proud of their work that they're doing and appreciative of the support. Mike?
And that transitions perfectly into really what the staffing and student discussion. If you're looking at the dashboard daily or every other day, however it may be, those are really the key numbers. Our staffing, when it becomes strained can become a challenge. And I know we've said it before, but that does become the biggest challenge. If a staff member becomes close contact, then that has the domino effect of who, what, when, where, and why, and two different types of scenarios. Whether they were in the building or not, and then whether or not that they can come in for depending on how long. Now, the guidance has changed, which does help us in the long run, meaning now that close contacts is a 10-day quarantine rather than a 14-day. So that helps us gain people back sooner, depending on whether they show signs or symptoms or not. So the other strain is actually student absences. Depending on their close contact and quarantine. We've been doing our best and trying to do our best to accommodate all families in regards to those areas, but sometimes it's just not feasible in regards to the transitioning back and forth between cohorts. So it's been a puzzle every day. Some days are very challenging. The 3 days at the middle school at one point, there was, five or six adults out, and typically on any given year, that's not a big deal, but you also have to understand that substituting is few and far between. We've had a few come in and have done a great job, but it's also, there's a reason why they're not full-time, meaning they like to pick and choose what days they want to come in. So those first two topics are really what make or break what's going on. And I have to say again that the staff and what they've done to support each other through these instances that have occurred has been nothing short of phenomenal. I think everyone's trying to keep school open and keep the boat rowing in the right direction, and they've done a great job. So we appreciate it, and I know Mr. Nola covering classes, Mr. Collins covering classes, Dr. Cheney covering classes. You can go down the line of the administrators who have jumped in to cover classes and teach. So it's been great, and we're hoping to keep this moving. Which leads us to winter sports. Dr. Metzler.
The winter sports, and I've had conversations obviously with Dr. Powers at Pinkerton Academy, and I know there's an effort at the high school level to try to put together some sort of winter sports. So think about this: like, how do you wrestle? How do you have indoor sports where, if you remember what we said in the fall was, well, we're out. Sorry, Mike. So I've had conversations with Dr. Powers at Pinkerton Academy about winter sports, and the high school level, I know that they're trying very hard to, they're looking at that December 14th date of starting practices and hopefully being able to have some contests. But you ask yourself, how do you wrestle? How do you have basketball? How do you have indoor sports? If you remember our rationale in the fall was they're outside and we can do a pretty good job with social distancing and creating some sites. Unfortunately for our winter sports at the middle school level, because of the model, the way we have it set up with the different cohorts and not crossing them over and trying to find a way to manage this and not having teams to play and not having a league and partial league, the risk kind of really wasn't worth what we might be able to offer in some sort of fractured kind of winter season, meaning something like that could shut us down in both buildings pretty quickly. So we right now we don't have a plan for winter sports. We really want to focus on teaching and learning and looking at that next phase. So that's really where we are with winter sports. That does not mean that the high school won't have them. They're still working on that. But again, there's some significant challenges even at the high school level, and they have a lot more flexibility perhaps and support than perhaps we would have at our schools. So Yeah, so for now, we don't have winter sports planned, in short. On to the next thing, inclement weather. There's been some talk about in the event that we have blizzard bags, if we have a snow day, we have an emergency. As you know, we're really dependent on, obviously, people having power and then people having access and those sorts of things. So we talked about this, and we didn't really think in this particular year that assigning work or giving blizzard bags was probably a good strategy. So we're going to look more at the traditional snow day, the counting days, counting hours kind of thing. We have a tremendous amount of flexibility through the Department of Ed with our plan and what we're doing. So like for kids, for our students out there, for your families, you can count more on a traditional snow day as opposed to work being assigned in the blizzard bag kind of model. Now, some people would say you have a remote model but we're we're just thinking that those may be some good days for a break. Now, in the event we will take a look at this, in the event that we get a lot of snow and we're missing a lot of days, we will have a plan in place. But for now, these first few, we'll be looking at traditional snow days, so you can count on those. Mike?
And this is just a friendly reminder about our event tomorrow night with Lynn Lyons. We've sent out a couple emails as well as posted to Twitter and Facebook. Lynn is phenomenal. I can't say it enough. And right now, our registration, I believe we have upwards of 100 people registered or 100 families registered. You'll get another email from us tomorrow as another reminder, along with the Zoom webinar link. It's interactive, so if parents have questions, they can ask as we're moving along. She does a great job of addressing as well. And also through the presenting contract with her, we'll be able to actually post the presentation for 2 weeks on our website. So if you are unable to make it, we'll be able to post it directly to our website. We can't use YouTube or Vimeo in regards to some of the other stuff, but we'll be able to certainly put it on our site for 2 weeks, and we'll have some information to email along to families if needed. So once again, if you have time tomorrow, I really suggest. She does a great job with anxiety. She's done a great job with supporting parents through some of these struggles through remote learning and being with your family. So it's just really, it's a great opportunity. And I also suggest students participating with their families as well. It's very powerful. So we've had her before in previous districts, and she does a phenomenal job. All right, I believe Mr. Collins is going to lead us off tonight for principals updates.
Hi, I think I'm on the screen. I can't see from what I'm looking at right now. Can you hear me, Mr. Flynn and company?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd like to just start off by reiterating what we heard from Dr. Messler and Mr. Flynn, that the staffing strains are happening, but at the same time, I want to turn that around and say the teaching staff are stepping up to the plate. Yes, obtaining substitutes are difficult, and there's lots of challenges with that, but we also have a wonderful staff that are finding ways to make it work. Some specific examples, we do some paraeducators that are teachers or have good, strong background that have stepped up into classrooms to cover that. There's some other pieces that are in there that are important. If we have a specialist out, I've got classroom teachers that said to me, please, can I just keep the kids for that extra 45 minutes? I really want to spend a little bit more time on math or whatever. We've had unified arts teachers that have stepped up to do extra pieces. You know, our art teacher, Mr. Torelli, is doing a combination in the building and outside of the building. Our PE teachers are amazing. They're actually trying to cover every single student in the building in live situations. And that was a scheduling nightmare. Dr. Cheney, thank you, nice job. Our front office, they're interacting with everybody out there on the phone all the day, trying to direct lots of just traffic going on. They're just those quiet rocks that keep the building going. I've seen teachers work together in a way this year that I have not seen in my 20 plus years as a building principals. I had a teacher covering for another teacher and saying, you know, I could walk right across the hallway to a teacher and she knew exactly where this teacher was going. They're covering each other in a way that I have not seen before. It's great. I want to say thank you to the board giving us an extra custodian. That has really made it a lot better for us. Having the 2 custodians during the day going around is just absolutely wonderful. We've got some really good custodial guys. This new guy we got is wonderful. Just want to thank them for doing a great job there. One of the things I just want to call out, the classroom teachers worked really hard. This is a COVID thing. We were trying to figure out what are we going to do about a report card. So I went to the teachers and I asked them just to get together as a team and go through it line by line, because they need to make judgments and they need to have background information, data to support the standards that are on a report card. So they actually came back with a wonderful report card, which is we're going to use our standard report card, but they're actually going to do some changes to the report cards. Teachers have spent countless hours trying to make the right decisions to give parents good information on where their children stand. There are some pieces, there will be an explanatory letter going with the report card to let parents know what is in the report card and what would typically be in the report card that we just said we can't use this particular quarter. So I would say we're using probably 75% of the standard report card with a great narrative. So the parents will see a full host of marks as well as a wonderful narrative to go with that. I really want to call out my special education teachers. I think if there's a team that's been trying to figure this whole thing out from the get-go, yes, we know that we got pushed to push the program a little bit further beyond because of everything that was going on. And then the state standards were pushing us to do extra meetings to talk about all of the pieces of COVID impact. I really feel proud to be the principal of my special education team. They've done a great job. The biggest problem is I've been telling them to try to slow down and take care of themselves so that they can take care of the children in a better way. It's been very difficult. Yes, we've had paraeducators that we unfortunately lost just because of, standard being out sick, or some of them needing to be involved with, the quarantine or the isolation discussions that have come up. But the special education team, again, fill in for each other, have been going around trying to make sure they can do it. Just remind you that this is a group of our staff that have been in the school since September 14th, dealing with students from the very beginning. And the last piece that I really want to say is the best part of my day is walking through the hallway and talking to the little ones. They are just thrilled to have more adults to talk to. They're just thrilled to have, to talk to their teacher. I walked into one classroom yesterday, they were having lunch, and it was hysterical just to see that they're just so thrilled to be with each other. And they're very respectful because it's amazing how much even the littlest ones walk in with their masks. They know what they need to do. And of course, one of the most important things we're trying to teach our children is to be resilient and persistent. And I think we're seeing that happening in our students. So kudos to my kids. They're just wonderful. The next thing I want to move on to is to talk a little bit about what's going to happen. I just heard Dr. Missler and Mr. Flynn speak to what's happening in the middle of phase 2. We're going to shut down the school with that 2-week closure going into a fully remote 2 weeks, which is right after vacation. Just want to give parents a heads up about what they are going to see. The model is actually built on a mixture of what we did during phase 1 with all of our school, as well as what they're currently seeing in cohort C. So there's a schedule. And if you talk about what that schedule is going to look like, I'll just give you some layers of that in a minute. But what ends up happening is the children will still get their daily classroom meeting. They'll still get their ELA, their math, science, and social studies throughout the week. Of course, it varies by grade level. We're still going to see that when time, what I need. And I think probably the most significant change that parents will see is the children in grades 1, 2, 3. Those students, their cohorts in A and B will join together. So that means they'll be in school the 4 or 5 days a week, depending on that particular week. Actually, they're both 5-day weeks. And A and B will join together in grades 1, 2, and 3. We have this oddity going on with the cohort C in kindergarten and in grade 4. So that's a combination of A and C. And the children that are in your grade 1, 2, 3 cohort C will actually it's business as usual for them. The other thing I wanted to mention too is we're having a discussion as we get deeper into the school year, a schedule pieces that is very important to our school is to take a look at the unified arts, because we've minimized the unified arts and we're now starting to see some of the options of expanding some of the unified arts, and also the direct impact that that will allow us to free up some classroom teachers to support those students that can't be in school. You know, a child that may be quarantined, that's not necessarily in a cohort C, or possibly the student that maybe need to be home for an isolation. So we're looking at adding some more things such as more technology classes, the technology computer classes. And we're talking to some more of our unified arts coming in to do live sessions at school. We're also trying to be very cognizant about the amount of instructional time, looking at screen time for our little learners, as well as the students as they move up towards the older students in our building. Just to give you some numbers, we started with kindergarten no more than 45 minutes a day. And by the time we get up into January, we're going to be getting closer to what is more of the 150 minutes a day, which you would probably see in grade 1. And then grades 2, 3, and 4, they're pushing all the way up to 180 to 200 minutes a day. So we're actually increasing that, that screen instructional time through Zoom and such. I just want to remind everybody else that special education services for those first 2 weeks of January will be individualized schedules for the students, and it's going to be fully remote. So that means for those 2 weeks, because again, for the safety of all, we're trying to keep everybody out of the building and let everybody just sort of carefully work out of the vacation stuff that may happen. And that includes the office staff and administration. But of course, when we work from home, we're certainly right there near the phone, so we can still keep in touch with our families out there. The last thing that I just want to say is I want to say thank you to the board for providing a lot of support so that we can do this effectively. Getting those Chromebooks was a big piece. Getting the additional para staff, which we hope can be arriving any day now. Getting all of the other pieces like the new custodian. I mean, we really appreciate your support. So thank you. I'll hand it over to Mrs. Danola.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're all set, Mr.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm happy to report that we have some very positive news with regards to our school district and the student services plan. Before I speak to my school particularly, I just like to share the work that our staff and our students and our community has done in support of our annual Christmas Stars program. This year, the Hsdsb Middle School and the Central School collaborated with holiday meal and gift distribution efforts. This program was designed to support students and families in need during the holiday season. The Hsdsb School District faculty and staff generously purchased winter essentials, board games, and gift cards for our student services team to distribute. The Christmas Stars program is made possible by our staff, and we thank them for their continued support and participation year after year. In addition to the generosity of our own school staff, this program has also been supported by our local community partners, including a small business owner here in Hampstead. Tim and Susan Ober from the Ober Easy Diner in Hampstead, that used to be Christina's, donated $400 that is targeted towards a Hampstead family. This year, our friends of the Greater Salem Rotary Club provided us with $1,000 in Market Basket gift cards. St. Anne's has continued to support our school community during COVID and also during this holiday season with gift efforts as well as holiday meals for our families in needs. A thank you to the Lions Club, who has also worked closely with our students in our services team, and we are grateful for their continued support for our students and families. This past weekend, Hsdsb Middle School students from the National Junior Honor Society and the Student Council engaged in an outdoor socially distanced holiday drive. The efforts of these students and the generosity of our Hampstead community supported the St. Anne's Food Pantry and non-perishable food and essential hygiene items. We collected lots of gifts and toys and games that will support our Christmas Stars program. We had 8th grade students dressed as Santa Claus, and we thank the Hampstead Fire Department and Captain Dane for showing support as well as with their presence at the event. As ever, we are humbled and heartened by the generosity of our staff, our families, and the community at large. This speaks so well of our beautiful district here in Hampstead, and even in the most difficult of times, we have found we are able to give and give and give. I'm so very proud to work for this district. Moving on to our school. During the hybrid learning, we have seen an incredible increase in student participation and achievement. Just today, I was speaking with my 5th graders, and I'm asking them, what are they really learning about being in school in the hybrid kind of system? And their words that they were just so incredibly soulful, and said immediately that, you know, because they're with their teachers, they're in the school, they are speeding up their learning and allowing for deeper understanding. They're able to ask their teachers things in real time. Instead of waiting for emails, enduring time delays, and experiencing computer glitches, they were able to learn, relearn, and move forward at a natural pace. At the same time, a few hours later, I met with my 5th grade teachers and 6th grade teachers, and I asked them, how is it going in hybrid? How does it feel coming into the building every day? Is this heavy? Is this light? Please tell me how this feels. I know how I feel, but I needed them to share it with me after speaking to my excited students. And my staff said, honestly, they said the challenges are real working in the building during pandemic, but they said they are just so excited to be in front of our students every single day. And although there are very different procedures on how we walk down the hallways, how we eat lunch, how we are distanced, and how we join together in recess, they said that truly the kids have been magnificent. We have not had one issue where we've had to speak to a child about following the rules. They're so appreciative and so grateful to see one another. And I have to see us as well, that we have had a very positive experience. And again, it's difficult, it's hard, but that's what teaching is. And that's what we signed up for. And that's what we show up for every single day. So as a principal of Hampstead Middle School, I can tell you we are getting it done. We are learning new ways, and we are open to feedback from parents. Hampstead Middle School parents and district parents are not shy from sharing their thoughts with us. And we really do cherish these comments, and we adapt and we learn and we talk and we move forward. None of us have been here before, but we are going to do our best, and because our kids are worth it. I'd like to just say a huge thank you to our paraprofessionals. And as Mr. Flynn was saying, when you have 5 or 6 teachers out because of many varying reasons, and you only have one sub, you put out the SOS, and we have paraprofessionals, special education, regular ed paras saying, I will absolutely cover this class. I will do whatever you need to do, and have taken on major roles that have not been part of their daily schedules. So we are very, very thankful to our paraprofessionals, our main office staff. You call them, they are so gracious. And yesterday, without internet all day, we all kind of were looking at each other at 7 o'clock in the morning saying, okay, how are we going to do this? And we just rolled up our sleeves. Mrs. Whitney, Mrs. Foss, and Mrs. Curry, with the grace and professionalism, they managed to get our kids in and out, and with bus transportation, we didn't miss a kid. Our school nurse, Mrs. Dower, is in contact with DHS every single day. She is the authority. She speaks absolutely clearly on what the safety protocols are, what needs to happen. We have an A, B, and through Z plan at all times. We're very, very lucky to have her. The facilities are well kept, they're clean. And I just want to give a shout out. we have four different cohorts going on at the middle school. And we've done as much shifting to support individual families and their needs and their sensitivities during this time without judgment. And I'll tell you, Mrs. Joseph in the past month has created 49 individual student schedule changes. And that's times 10. So that's 490 classes she has changed to make sure that families are supported and are able to move about. That supports the needs of their families. So big kudos to Mrs. Joseph. I would like to say, parents, thank you for being so proactive, speaking to our school nurse, speaking to the teachers, speaking to administration. If illness falls your way, how you are protecting yourselves and keeping your children home, and working with us. So we're on the same boat. Parent-teacher conferences last week. I have to say, overwhelmingly, there were positive responses of gratitude from parents to teachers. Parents made it a point to show their appreciation with kind words of support. It was very well received by my staff, and during this holiday season, I will tell you, they were very touched to know that they were supported and held in high esteem for all the work that they have done in the different ways of teaching. After the winter break, HMS will return to the full remote during those 2 weeks that Mr. Collins was speaking of. During this full remote model, though, it will be different than the fall when we did phase 1. Instruction will be increased to reflect a full day schedule, albeit remote. The school day will begin at 8:05 and will end at 2:45 p.m. Given this expansion of time, teachers are cognizant of the fact of increased screen time and will absolutely take the lead from students and incorporate movement breaks, brain breaks, and opportunities for students to chat with friends and social emotional support through our advisory program. And when we return on January 19th, we plan to resume to the hybrid learning model that we are currently in. So at this point in time, I'm open to any questions you may have with regards to the middle school, but we're just so happy to see our kids and to support families in any cohort that they are in at this time.
If you don't mind, I'm going to jump in real quick, and I know Dr. Metzler has already said it about the administrative team, but you know, every day is a challenge. Every day is different, and what this team has done to try and put the pieces together every day. Mr. Nolo, Mr. Collins, Dr. Cheney, Ms. Joseph, Mrs. Flynn, and Mr. Mackey have done a phenomenal job of making sure that we get through each day and plan for the next one. So just one more thank you to them, and we really appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
Dr. Metzler, anything to wrap up?
No, well said. You know, again, you know, our principals, you know, do a great job championing their schools and certainly advocating for the students and families they serve. So again, you know, great job. And again, we just appreciate everybody in Hampstead looking at this bubble and protecting it so that we can continue on with our plan. And like I said, we look forward to late winter, early spring, being able to really hopefully execute that phase 3. So that's our next planning piece. So thanks to everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Thank you, everyone who just participated in that update. Board members, any questions or comments for any of our administrators on the learning update? Go ahead, Jim, I see you. Go ahead.
Mr. Nola, Mr. Collins, when do you think the schedule for the 2 weeks after Christmas will be emailed so the kids, the parents will know exactly what classes are at what time and what days?
Mr. Sweeney, this is Mrs. Denola. We are sending out report cards on Friday. For the younger students, we are working to incorporate their schedules and in a written format. It is on PowerSchool. The students will be following their PowerSchool daily schedule. The students know how to follow it, and it will be a lot more simple than when we did different models during hybrid learning. So they are going back old school, but new school, remote.
At the central school, if a child's in cohort C, it's going to look very similar. There will be some minor adjustments because of the unified arts things we're talking about. As far as the specific schedules that are set up by for the classrooms, those can be released probably in the next week or so. Those have been completed for all of the students in cohorts A and B that do those combinations we were referring to earlier. I think probably the group that it's going to be the most difficult to share the schedules is going to be the special education population. So for 2 weeks, we're going to have to set up some very unique schedules. So that'll have to go to all of the families probably the week before we head out on Christmas vacation, so parents know that. Because the teachers, the special education and the classroom teachers need to work together to make sure that students can still get into their core classes, which we refer to as tier 1, yet still get their modified instruction. And it's not an easy part of the process at an elementary level. So communication wise, we should be able to get most of it out probably in the next week or so. And special education will come out closer to our leaving before vacation, but they'll know before vacation.
Right. But this schedule for the 2 weeks after Christmas, if for some reason we had to go remote next week because of COVID in both schools, that's the schedule we'd follow. And if February we had to go remote for a week or two or whatever, that's the schedule we would follow, correct?
Correct.
Yes, and I'll say that we are ready for that. If we did prepare for that because all of the teaching staff are fully aware of that. I think probably, again, special education is going to be the most challenging because there's so many unique schedules. Of course, special education staff have been hit just like anybody else as far as some staff that are part of the whole isolation quarantine conversations.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Caitlin, if I could, Caitlin?
Yes,
Yeah,
go ahead,
so-
Dr. Metzler.
So we have that 2 week period, and I'm pretty sure, with the surge the way it's going, that the metrics are going to look really not so great for Rockingham County and probably for the entire state of New Hampshire. But we will be looking at obviously Hampstead again as the Hampstead bubble in terms of what can we do. Our hope is to be back in hybrid, but in the event that we couldn't, we would continue on with this. We're not saying that's what we're doing. We're gonna have to take a hard look. A lot can happen between now and obviously the middle of January. But our hope is to be able to pivot right back into the hybrid model as early as the 19th of January. So I hope that everybody, that's the understanding. I hope that's clear to everyone. Thanks, Caitlin.
Yep. Any further questions or comments on our learning update? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing anybody, so thank you all for the update. Keep going. So we're going to move on to the budget discussion. Mr. Dowd, where are you? There you are.
Thank you.
I'm going to turn this over to you now.
Very well. So school board has a copy of the budget, and I hope you can see that on the screen. Current budget.
Yes.
So we are looking at a reduction in the budget, and the school board had removed a position at the last meeting, and that position removal has been reflected in the budget. But overall, the budget as being presented is at second draft $30,616,347. It is a 4.55% increase over last year's budget. The initial budget that was proposed, if you recall, was $385,454 higher, and that was at a 5.8% increase over the prior year budget. So in addition to the position that we spoke about removing, I went ahead and took a look at some of the other factors. and including insurance, which I was able to bring down quite a bit, as well as make some adjustments for Pinkerton tuition, which had come in at actual. So here's a breakdown of some of our expenditure line items or groupings with where some of those increases are occurring. So salaries, group insurance, Social Security, retirement's up. It's still up for both groups. That's from the state, if you recall. So I'm going to move through the budget itself. You have this report. I've just highlighted some areas to touch upon where there have been some increases or decreases generally. And you'll see the administrative salaries line here is down to reflect the reduction of the position that that we spoke about at the last meeting. You'll see that professional salaries for teachers are up 111,000. That is by contract. Our tuition to public academies, that is up 287,000. The actuals for Pinkerton came in, and overall the Pinkerton budget itself is increased by 1.28%, but our regular tuition itself has increased a little over 3.5%. I had factored in higher than that at our last meeting, so I was able to reduce that line to reflect the actual increase. Their other lines had also come in at about 3% for one program, 5% for another program, and 12% for a separate program. We'll talk about those momentarily. The books and info resources, you'll see an increase here of 200,000, and that reflects some curriculum needs that the school is up against and facing. We have a couple of those throughout the district that we're working on renewing so that we can have curriculum in those areas for the next year. Under special education, you'll note that the tuition line has been showing as a reduction, and I was actually able to reduce that line a little bit more based on the Pinkerton actuals compared to where we had budgeted. I did move some of that funding into the tuition for private and other lines, which is right here. That's the 251,000. That is a reflection of a greater need that we have on the part of the district, and even at a tight number, I should say that even at the 250,000, that's a very tight number compared to where we think we may end up based on projected placements outside of the district. So that's still a bit of a tight number. See some other lines there. I think to the this line right here, outside services, just reflects the need for services that we are experiencing as part of our special education program and the needs of our students generally. So you'll see that the budget for the most part is fairly, not fairly level, but it's fairly in nothing really big to speak about. I did increase the legal fee line. I believe the school board made that request. So that line is increased 55,000. The SAU line right now, just so you know, just for comparative purposes, it's showing as down 99,000. And what I've done is I've taken the SAU line that we had previously paid last year, 537 was our assessment, and I've included a lot of, just for comparative purposes, a lot of the salaries and related expenses that we budgeted in that line. In the final budget, I'll be moving those to different lines within the budget. So, but for purposes here, it's handy to be able to see them in one spot. The numbers themselves wouldn't change. It's just that they'll shift around a little bit in the budget. So just as an FYI, nothing great beyond that in the budget. Transportation, this is a regular student transportation increase of 38,000 by contract, and we are still waiting on our special education transportation bid to go out. And as soon as we have those numbers, we can put them in. So you'll see insurance showing an increase of 170,000. And our Social Security of 79,000 is based on the wages that we're introducing into or wages that have been agreed upon by contract or that we have in the budget. The employee retirement, teacher retirement, these two numbers right here, these really are largely the result of an increase in the rate, as we spoke about before, from the New Hampshire retirement system. So as I go through the budget, you'll see a reduction and close out the budget of $100,000 that was included by the voters as a contribution to the capital reserve fund last year. So you'll see the total proposed budget at $30,616,000. Prior year was at $29,283,960 for a difference of $1,332,386. So are there any questions, comments, or other discussion on the budget that I can assist with at this time?
Anyone? I don't have any questions. I mean, we know it's an increase. Jeff, I think you've done a good job leading us through the fact that these increases are not really anything we have discretion over. So, you know, I want to acknowledge that as we talk about this, we know it's an increase. We often strive to keep budget numbers and increases as low as we can. And this is just, frankly, one of those years where that doesn't, you know, we're going to have increases, and that is what it is. I don't have any questions on what has been presented.
I think it's important.
Anybody
Caitlin,
else? Oh, go ahead.
I think it's
Sorry.
important. No, it's important to note that, you know, the budget discussion has been relatively quiet this year. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there really are not a lot of budget requests that have been made. We don't have a lot of really new initiatives in the budget, if anything. I look well upon the prior years when we did have different things to consider from the different schools and different projects. I just don't, within the operating budget itself, a lot of what's in there is just is mandated or already agreed upon by the voters by contract. So.
Yep. I don't want to cut anybody off. I can't see everyone, so you got to speak up, board members, if you have questions or anything. I guess we don't have questions.
Very good.
I think everybody's pretty set where we are, so.
Okay, I do have the default budget to review as well.
Yep.
Bring that up there for you. I'd included this, you should have a copy of that as well. It does, the report itself does show budget HSD at the top. However, you'll note that the budget column itself, the budget category is the default budget. So that's one distinguishing factor right there. See the reduction in this line. I'm just going to go through real quick. And actually, let me just take a look at the bottom here. Again, the default budget's currently at $30,652,326. Voted last year showing at $29,283,960. So that's a difference of $1,368,000. Typically, and I'll remind you on the default budget that in essence, the default budget is the budget that would be passed should the voters not opt to adopt the operating budget as proposed on the ballot. The default budget contains the prior year appropriations, plus or minus a couple things. Included are contractual obligations, legal obligations, unless any positions are removed by the school board, among other factors. I'll just sum it up quickly. So essentially, really, when you get into a budget situation that you're either legally mandated to have or contractually obligated to have any increases in the budget, those increases go in, and you would tend to see, I think, a big difference in the budgets between the years if we had any noteworthy one-time expenditures which are not recurring from last year's or from the current year budget, or if we had any crazy expenditures in our proposed operating budget, but we really don't. So I'll go through these. This is a function object budget, so it's a little bit easier to take a look at. And you'll see again, we talked about the position that was removed, the contractually obligated CBA increase in professional salaries makes up a lot of that. So Pinkerton, we increase in tuition, we talked about that. We have some curriculum initiatives, we talked about that. Again, all these are, I believe for the most part, contractually obligated by the voters. And tuition to other LEAs, we had an increase in our, let's say, our outplacements, which are again legally required. Tuitions to public academies, that had actually gone down a bit, but I haven't in the actuals, but I have not taken it down because we would base the current year default budget on the actual appropriations from the prior year. In that case, you'll see an increase in our special education tuition line, again, legally required services. So nothing else really dramatic in the budget itself. Insurance, we have some mandated increases. Social Security, that ties to a lot of the wages we were talking about earlier. Employee retirement, these are some, and I calculate these a little bit differently between the default budget and the operating budget. It's just the way that the statute reads, but you can see both of those are up quite a bit. So, and they may adjust a little bit more as we wrap up the budget process. So that's it. And again, I've removed the $400,000 contribution to capital reserve. If the voters wanted to vote for that and that were on the warrant again, they could do so, and it would be added as a budget line here, but that's going to be up to the voters to vote. So it is an increase in the budget. It is in both budgets, in the default budget and in the operating budget. But I don't really, not seeing anything in the budget that's really new or exciting or a budget driver aside from legally required items and contractual obligations. So I'll entertain any questions you have on the default budget. And again, with a lot of these items, and particularly with the any one-time expenditures that we have, which we really did not have from last year, the school board would be in their discretion to either consider those expenditures one time or not, and remove them from the budget. So ball's in your court. I'll entertain any questions that anyone should have.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Any questions for anyone for Jeff on the default? Okay. Since we just switched over, did we lose Karen?
She's here.
Oh, there she is. Sorry. That was weird. My screen did something funny.
No, I'm here.
Okay, sorry. I don't know. I wasn't seeing your picture on my screen for a second. I thought we lost you. Okay, thank you. Okay, sorry. Getting back. So I'm not seeing any questions. So thank you, Jeff.
Certainly.
Okay. So next up on our agenda, we have the Hsdsb tentative agreement. Sort of a last minute change here. I believe we need to go, board members need to go to a non-meeting, which should be short, it shouldn't be super lengthy, because we have to go to a non-meeting to talk about this before we can come back. We can't talk about lots of details before this contract's been ratified and made public. So for those watching who are non-board members, this meeting is going to stay up. Board members are going to leave this meeting. Board members, Mr. Dowd sent you an email with a new link. Please use that link, the one that came from Mr. Dowd. We're going to go to that non-meeting. Then we're going to come back to this one. So this one is going to stay up. We're not going to vote on anything in the non-meeting. If we are voting on this, it will be done back in the regular meeting. So sorry for everybody for the kind of last minute change on that. Who else do we need? Melissa, I think we need well, it's a non-meeting. Who else needs to come in? Somebody tell me. Board members? Dr. Metzler, you were in on negotiations, so I think you need to come in.
Correct. Me, Jeff, Jim, the board.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
What do we think? 15 minutes?
Do we have
so
Melissa?
Everybody knows?
Oh, and Melissa too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Melissa. Mike can't come in because he has to stay with this one open, I think. Okay, so board members, Melissa, Dr. Metzler, Jeff. So we're all going to leave, go to the link that Jeff sent, and then we'll be back. And Jim, you just said like 15 minutes? That sounds...
Well, no, I'm asking, Jeff, what do you think? 15 minutes is good?
It's probably not going to take
Thank
15 minutes. We just pretty much disclose
Yeah.
well, yeah, it could be 15 minutes. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so we're going to jump off. We'll come back. Okay. We've got everybody here. So going back to our current item on the agenda is the Hsdsb tentative agreement. We've now been updated, so I would like to ask for a motion to ratify the Hsdsb tentative agreement and move it to warrant pending ratification by the union.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or discussions?
Caitlin, I just wanted to say thank you to Hsdsb, and for all of you watching, if you don't know what HASPA stands for, it's Hampstead Support Personnel Association. I also want to thank Dr. Metzler and Jeff Dowd. The negotiations were very straightforward, and everybody worked together, and we got it done. So that's all. Thank you all.
Thank you for working on it, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
Okay, Melissa, will you please call the roll vote?
Yes, Miss Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell?
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor?
Thank you, Melissa. Okay, next item is going to wrap up our warrant discussions, which includes the default budget. So we're moving on to the 2021 warrant articles discussion. The first thing I want to do is go a little bit backwards to talk about the default budget. Mr. Dowd, I do want to ask you if this is a legally developed default budget.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. On that note, we do need to have a motion to move that default budget to the warrant. So if I could have a motion for that.
Motion.
Thanks. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, Melissa, will you please call the roll vote?
Yes, Miss Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor?
Okay, thank you. Okay, for the other items for the warrant article, so we have a few that have been on the last few years, one of them being the capital reserve. I am going to suggest at this point that we do not ask for a capital reserve contribution on the March ballot. We asked for a fair amount last year. We are asking to utilize it this year. And additionally, we would like to be able, if we have those extra funds, to be able to put them towards the 60s wing renovation, should that all move forward. So I'm going to suggest that we not put capital reserve on the warrant. I don't know what other feelings are for other board members. Not seeing any objections, so I think we're saying we will not put forward a capital reserve. We've already talked about renovation plans. Anything else that we need to talk about for the warrant? I mean, I know we have those standard ones about accepting reports and stuff, but we don't need to.
Caitlin,
I don't believe we actually.
could I just make a suggestion?
Sure, please do.
All right, it would not hurt any of the process if you asked for the capital reserve money and then you would not collect it if the 60s wing passes, right? So, because you don't have to, it's just a strategy to increase the capital reserve in the event that if 60s wing passes, you just don't collect it. But if the 60s wing didn't pass, you could add to it and have more money maybe to do it a year later.
The only thing I'm concerned about with that is confusing people. I know that people tend to get confused sometimes, and if it looks like we're asking for like 4 or 5 different dollar items. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, kind of as a way to continue to build up capital reserve, frankly, for the 60s wing. I don't know. I just don't want to confuse people.
Okay, I just didn't want that to not be.
Anybody else?
Person.
Well, no, I mean, that's not just me. I mean, I don't know what other board members are thinking here.
I think that if you wanted to look at the funding for the project, that it would be 1.16 out of, for the 60s wing, 1.16 out of the capital reserve. And, you know, do the same thing that you would normally do with the capital reserve and say 400,000 in lieu of capital reserve if, you know, if there is surplus available, which exceeds $150,000 from your normal budget. And that would actually give you the ability to expend the money as well. So you have the 1.16 out of capital reserve, and then you'd have the 400 that you would normally pay. You could apply to that project. Up to you guys. Just a thought.
I think the capital reserve on the warrant always confuses people. And that's where you gotta get it out there in a newspaper article and get that information out to people. Because it always confuses people, I guarantee it.
Yep.
I mean, I really think we should still try to get it, so we can build that back up. But I think it, even in a good year, it confuses people. It's up to us to, you know, whether, you know, in conjunction with the project that was just voted in, to do a mailer, you know, Penny writes an article, or whatever it is. It's up to us to, you know, educate people on what the warrant is about, so they're not afraid of it. Because it's pretty simple, actually. But, you know, if you're just reading it in the booth, like what 150,000, 400, you know, then what do you get at that point? If they don't understand it, it's a no. So it's just up to us to educate them. I still think we should try to put something on the ballot, like Dr. Metzler mentioned, but that's just me.
I'd be supportive of something like if we're trying to think of, you know, a way to do it of 100,000 or something, just to start building it back again, not go after the 400,000 that we did this past year. If that's what you're intending, Jim.
Right. No. Right. Not the 400.
But you bring up a good point, Dr. Metzler. If you know, we only need 50% for that warrant. If it doesn't pass for whatever reason, then you know, we try to do it again next year. It does increase. What is that increase? It's around 5 to 10%. So if we were to do 100,000, that covers about 5% of what that, you know, additional cost would be. So I'd be okay with like a motion for like 100,000 to raise for capital reserve.
Okay. I'm not hearing any huge objections. Do you want to make the motion, David?
All right.
Or
make a motion.
Jim or whoever?
Jim, you want to make it?
Yeah. So moved. What we just talked about, so moved.
What is it? We need to give Melissa something to write down here.
A motion to move to warrant to raise $100,000 to add to the capital reserve fund.
Second.
With all the surplus wording that we put in there.
Yeah, sorry, for above the 150,000. Yes.
Melissa, you've got it.
Thank you, Melissa.
Think so. Thank you.
You know, we need to be told what to say, you know.
This is why we have Melissa here. She's the one who keeps us from making massive mistakes. That's what happens.
Don't leave us, Melissa,
Okay.
ever.
All right. So David, I think, motioned it. Jim seconded it. Sure. Great.
Jim, did you second that?
Yes.
Okay.
Any further discussion or questions on that one? Okay. Melissa, will you please call the vote?
Yes. Miss Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yasenka.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. All in favor.
Great. Thank you. I don't think we have anything else for warrant articles. I don't think. Okay. So the last item under current business is to talk about our public hearing planning. We would have to assume that, especially in January, for our public hearing, which is really what we're talking about. It's the public hearing part. We're not quite to deliberative yet. We have to assume that it's not responsible to hold it in person, at least not with the numbers of, well, let's be real. We probably could hold it in person with the number of people who normally come to a public hearing, because I think in the past few years we've had like 15 people maybe, but it's just not, I don't think it's responsible to do it in person. So if we're talking about a Zoom public hearing in January, we need to talk about the best way to give people the opportunity to speak, because that is really one of the big purposes of the public hearing. Now that is not where they can make changes, because that's deliberative, but I pretty much want to hear from anybody who wants to talk about this, about how, I mean, I don't know if it makes sense to do it, and this might be more a question for Mike. You know, does it make sense to do it the same way that we run public comment?
Well, Caitlin, could I just jump in here?
Yeah.
Okay,
Of course.
Melissa was helpful with this. I know I've sent you, I know I forward you some of the New Hampshire School Boards Association information, right? So there was a successful annual meetings webinar, and there was a lot of handouts that went with it, and part of it was HB 1129. That's relative to notice requirements for certain municipal public hearings. So there's a lot of information there in terms of how you can do this via webinar, you know, what your public hearing should look like, and even more complicated, what a deliberative session would look like in the event that you can't do them in person. So perhaps some more research should be done before we just start chime in how we think this should be done, because I know the New Hampshire School Boards Association and then our legal team will tell us exactly, because there's been some talk about even in the deliberative session, how do you verify the voter registration? How do you, there's several things you need to do. And, and then if you have citizens petitions, and then if you have people trying to make adjustments to your articles on your warrant. So I just think we probably should give this a real comprehensive look and put together a game plan for the public hearing and the deliberative session, more based on what the School Boards Association and what our legal team's saying versus what we think we feel like doing, if that's the nicest way to say it. Melissa?
Perfect.
Okay.
No, perfect.
Also, Caitlin, I spoke with our moderator, Neil Reardon. He's also going to be attending a moderator session. Moderators from the state will go there because they're concerned about how they're going to run the deliberative and get the votes. So yeah, I think Dr. Metzler's right. Wait and see what everyone's doing.
Okay. So I do have a question on that. Would we anticipate then that the board would have to hold a meeting? Because I mean, technically our next meeting is the public hearing at this point. So
no, you wouldn't need to hold, we just need to give you the game plan, right? So, I mean,
that's fine.
That's all. What's the best way to do it? It would be really, it'd be great if the town and the school district did it's similar, so we don't confuse the voters, right? So we'll probably want to connect with, how the town's doing their deliberative session as well. And it's the same moderator, so that should be helpful.
Okay. So this will get planned out and we'll make sure the public knows about it.
Correct. Other than that,
Okay,
I think
perfect.
we'd just be guessing at what we think is the right.
Yeah,
number.
no, I agree. Agree. Perfect. Okay, I'm gonna keep getting us along now because I know what happens to this board past 10 o'clock. So, board comments and correspondence. Does anyone have comments or correspondence? Okay, I don't see, oh, good,
Oh,
okay,
I'm
Megan,
sorry,
go.
I'll be quick.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
So I'd just like to ask everyone to check their emails. Today we had released a thought exchange to the community in regards to the Central School renovation plan. It should just take a couple minutes. It's a couple questions. We're really just looking for you to share your feedback, considerations, questions as we continue to move forward on the plan. And I think I don't know, Mr. Flynn can confirm, but I think we're keeping it open for a couple weeks up until the holidays.
Yep, it is open until that. So it's about 2 weeks. We already have 121 people that have participated, so it's definitely moving along.
Thank you. That was it.
Thank you, Megan. You're muted, Jim.
You cannot read my lips? Sorry.
No.
How could people that aren't on our email distribution list from the Central and Middle School, like, get access to that? You know, I'm just wondering, like,
Yeah, so I think, David, did you share it on social media?
Okay, I just wondering.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out there, Jim. I don't know, Mr. Flynn, if we could communicate that on our Twitter page, our school Facebook page, and then I don't know if we can post that in somehow in the around the town hall, etc. If that makes sense, also.
I can certainly push out to social media tomorrow to cast a wider net. You guys can certainly forward it along to your connections within the town.
Okay.
In regards to town hall or library, that I think that'd be probably a little bit of a challenge. I think we're going to have to take the avenue of social media and forwarding it along to community members who are in the Lions Club, things of that nature, to cast a little bit of a wider net in regards to community members who do not have students within the district, within the building, excuse me.
And then Megan and I are meeting tomorrow, Jim. So maybe Megan, this is something we can talk about also, about how to get that out there. I know we've talked about writing to the papers, so that might be another way. So thanks, Jim.
Well,
And I just say thank you to Mr. Flynn and the helpful people, the team at Thought Exchange, that it really helped with this. We had some good discussions with the team from Thought Exchange on how to properly get this out there and some different ways to keep it simple yet powerful. So thank you, Mr. Flynn, for helping coordinate that.
No problem.
Anybody else?
Caitlin, just a reminder to board members, you should have a voucher packet in your email for review and approval.
Okay. Dr. Metzler, consent agenda.
Great. Quickly, there is no personnel report this evening. Have a few quick items. First, for HAS para educator postings. We have 7 postings that are now being advertised for full-time paras. They are 1-year positions. We approved by this, as was approved by the school board, for full-time status to help support special education program throughout the pandemic. Interesting candidates, again, please apply through AppleTrack. Jeff and I now will probably go back and forth a little bit here. I mentioned the Central School sinks that was going to go out to bid. Jeff, has that been out to bid? Just an update.
It is not as of yet. No, no, it is not. A couple technical reasons, but it is not. No.
Okay, food service agreement and the bus contracts, have those been done yet?
Still working on them.
Okay, still working on. All right, Mike, at some point, we want to reach out to Hsdsb. Remember, we were going to get a second semester refresher on our population, right? So in terms of school, right? So if we can do that.
No problem.
Jeff, have you heard anything on the IDA money from that was sent to Derry? Have we heard anything on that yet?
No, I have not. I have a follow-up call with them as well, so I can reach out and address that with them as well. Thank you.
Excellent. And finally, we superintendents from the sending schools had an opportunity to meet with Dr. Powers and the sending schools. You know, we're trying to get together to make sure we all understand everyone's plans. You know, districts are all in different places because their plans are different. And you know, I was talking to Dr. Powers today. Again, I mentioned it earlier this evening about winter sports, but also they're taking a good look at what their plan will be after a break. I know that they're hopeful that they can get back, you know, in hybrid right away, but they're also having quite a bit of cases are popping up, mostly the remote cases, but you know, they're struggling as well. But again, the winter meeting, we talked a lot about you know, communication. Again, I, you know, compliment Dr. Powers. That his communication to the sending towns has been outstanding. I know that the sending boards had asked about that on several times, but it's been great. So we'll have the next one. We'll have another meeting in a couple of months, and I can update you at that point. And Jeff, I think you talked about the copier cooperative purchasing proposal. Has that been moved forward?
Correct. I've been working with them to schedule time to get out and begin their evaluation for us.
Excellent. Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Caitlin, for the consent agenda.
Okay, thank you. I think I don't have any other business or old business. I do need to ask for a motion for a non-public under our 91A:3, paragraph 2C, reputation. I have a motion.
Make the motion.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, hold on. Something's going
What?
on with my computer. No, we didn't go around for old business, new business. You mentioned what you had, but no one else.
Sorry. Sorry.
You just delay that for a second?
Yep, that's fine. Let's delay the motion.
I get a couple of things. I'm feeling pretty disconnected about Pinkerton. Can we get a Pinkerton liaison? You know, is that possible? Did we have one this year or reach out to anybody?
They do have a student representative that has not been at our meetings this fall. I'm not sure. Caitlin, was there a concern with student rep at these meetings or no? I'm not sure. I don't have an answer as to why the particular student has not been participating.
I think it fell through the cracks. That's what I think it is. We do have, I believe we still have the same rep.
Yeah, I'm with you, Caitlin. I think that's probably on us. It's probably on us sending.
Yeah, no,
information to her.
totally.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's totally the case. I totally spaced on it.
So Melissa, could you please, you know, with our apologies, just to see where we are with the student rep. I know you have her email address, or I hope you have her email address, and if you could just touch base with her and see, and then we can hopefully get her reconnected with us.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to
Yeah,
her tomorrow.
Great, and please send
Okay.
our apologies.
I mean, I think,
It's us. Yep.
yeah. I think the next opportunity would be the January 26th meeting. The public hearing, she doesn't generally attend those. We
No,
don't have them
not
do that, but
typically.
we have a meeting on the 26th, so she could give us an update then on how the Pinkerton kids are feeling. Because I think that would be what it would be. I mean, they've been remote for a while. So
Dr. Metzler, do you think it's an opportunity for someone from Pinkerton and the leadership to speak to the Hampstead parents of Pinkerton students with an update or something? Just
I
wondering.
can certainly,
I can
certainly
say-
make that request.
oh.
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry. I was just going to say, just as the parent of a Pinkerton student, they're pretty communicative. I certainly don't think it would be a bad thing at some point to have them here or have them, speak, but, we get at least weekly updates about what's going on, if not very frequently more than weekly. But I can totally understand, Jim, not having a student there, you're not getting the same updates.
Right. Right. The other thing, this is more of a new business situation. I'm wondering if we could have an agenda item to talk about, it might be a conversation about middle school, but our ventures program, which is fantastic. But I know in the past, we might have had some advanced classes. I'm thinking more in the way of, can we offer an official honors program for certain classes? I don't know if that would work in central school, maybe it just for 7th and 8th graders, I don't know. But, I know the limited time that the ventures kids have in the ventures classes. I really think I would like to have a conversation about, having a real developed honors program in Hampstead. And we don't have to talk about it. Maybe we can put it on some agenda item, what we've done in the past and where we should go, or if we're already there, I don't know.
Yeah, we can put it down for a future meeting. I mean, we could do, we have a meeting on the 26th of January. We have a meeting on the 9th. Those are our like regular meetings that aren't in conjunction with whatever deliberative or public hearing. I'm just looking at the calendar. So we could do that, like one of those meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Melissa, will you?
discussion, that discussion, that's a program of studies discussion, because it really would be, it's pretty extensive in terms of creating, implementing. I've done it at a middle school, I've done it at a high school. It's leveling. But it's a pretty extensive, it's gonna take quite a bit of research, and you have to be very clear on what your plan is, and if there's staffing needs, those sorts of things. So is it 2 years out? Because it would be a budget issue, right? Because you're talking about additional staffing potentially and materials.
Yeah, it could be out. I mean, it's something I've been thinking about. I think it's a conversation we should have. I remember in the past, and maybe there are current students taking advanced classes at Pinkerton. I'm just, I know, back in the day, in my junior high school, which was just 7th and 8th grade, they had full-fledged honors programs. And I'm just wondering why, and I love what our ventures teachers are doing. I just wondering if we could offer more of it. And maybe in other subjects also.
No, I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. I understand the direction. So just let Caitlin, we just need some time, as you pick the date, and then, what we're looking at. Are we looking at presenting potential models and costs associated with and staffing, or, what that would look like? I guess I just want to be clear on what we'd be presenting, right? I don't want to turn this into a debate over, because it's tracking, it's somewhat of a tracking piece. And I do believe it has tremendous value. So I don't want you to, because I said the word tracking, think that I don't. But a lot of planning and time would need to be put into what we present, right?
Well, I would think it would be an initial conversation. I wouldn't want you to come up with any full-fledged plan. I'm just wanted to start the conversation about what we're doing, if we've done anything in the past. I mean, how could we incrementally get to where we want to go if we want to go somewhere? So an
so
initial
perhaps-
conversation, I guess.
Got it. So perhaps it's more of a board level discussion, a philosophical discussion in terms of what something could potentially look like, right? In the event that you wanted to challenge our higher achieving students, correct?
Right.
Got it.
No, I don't want to tell you guys what to do. I'm just asking, is it possible we start talking about it? And if that's something we all agree upon, come up with a path to get us there. Could it take us several years? Yes. Hey, as long as we're moving forward, I'm happy.
Okay, we can put it on agenda for discussion. I'm sort of thinking the 9th, but let me look at what agendas look like as we go forward. Okay, anything else for other business? Okay, seeing none, let's go back to the motion that we had.
Yeah, we had a
I think we
motion.
had a motion in a second.
Yeah, we had a motion on the table, so it's ready to vote to go into non-public under C. Matters which if discussed in public is for reputation. So yes, we're all set. We can take the vote.
Okay. Go ahead, Melissa.
Okay. Ms. Malcolm,
Yes.
Mrs. Parnell,
Yes.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith, I didn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sweeney,
Yes.
Mrs. Yusenka.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Time is 10:32.
Okay, we are not, this is not a decision-making non-public, so we will not return. So the meeting is going to end. Board members and everybody else, you've got an additional link from Mr. Flynn to use. So see you in there.